The shimmering landscape of Voria Prime stretched endlessly, its twin suns painting the skies in hues of orange and violet. Glistening forest of luminescent flora twisted in surreal shapes, while creatures of every conceivable form flitted about, blending seamlessly with their surroundings. But amidst the alien beauty, an unusual gathering took place at the military encampment of the Vorian Defense Force. Jerk Voss stood apart from the vibrant, chattering ranks of Voria's elite soldiers. He was a relic of another time, an alien war veteran who had traversed worlds far more perilous than their lush paradise. A mantle of scars etched across his leathery skin spoke of battles fought on Deathworld's planets infamous for their inhospitable environments and lethal native life. Jerk had seen it all: fire-breathing beasts, towering predators, in a universe full of horrors that could tear a warrior apart in seconds. As Voria's soldiers and assortment of colorful, sleek beings gathered around him, their curiosity was palpable. They had heard tales of the Deathworlds, whispered in reverence and dread, but had never encountered a veteran who had lived to tell the tale. "Tell us more about your home," asked Lurak, a Vorian officer whose 6 shimmering eyes widened in excitement. "The tales of the Deathworlds are terrifying. Is it true that the creatures there hunt in packs, capable of overwhelming an entire battalion?" Jerk's deep-set eyes sparkled with a mix of nostalgia and pain. The memories surged back unbidden, each one a ghost that danced along the edges of his consciousness. He took a deep breath, the air thick with the sweetness of Voria's flora, and began. "Pack hunters?" he echoed, his voice gravelly, carrying the weight of experience. "You have no idea. On one such world, known as Vexar 9, I faced the Ashen Stalkers. They move silently, like shadows, and strike with a ferocity you wouldn't believe. Their teeth," he paused for effect, allowing the tension to build, "are like daggers forged in the fires of their own world." The soldiers listened intently, captivated. Jerk continued, detailing the vicious hunt he had once endured, trapped in a tangle of alien vines, while the stalkers circled him like hungry wolves. His words painted vivid images, the tension in the air thickening as he spoke of his narrow escape, the way he had used the environment to outsmart his pursuers. "Every single moment on a Deathworld is a battle for survival," Jerk declared, his voice rising with fervor. "You cannot afford to be careless, to underestimate anything around you. The very ground you stand on can be your enemy." The crowd exchanged glances, excitement mingling with disbelief. Finally, a soldier named Rhynak, with shimmering scales that reflected the light like a prism, stepped forward. "But those creatures you speak of, are they really real?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "Could such horrors exist?" Jerk nodded gravely, his expression hardening. "They are real, my friend. They are very real, and they will challenge you in ways you can't imagine. On Deathworlds, it's not just the creatures you must fear, but the land itself. The atmosphere can drive you mad. The very plants can ensnare you. I've seen my comrades fall to despair before they even met their end." The Vorians were enraptured, their imaginations swirling with images of dread and bravery. They had always been a civilization focused on harmony with nature, cultivating beauty and unity. The concept of a world that sought to destroy them, rather than embrace them, was foreign and terrifying. "What happened next?" Lurak urged, leaning closer. Jerk leaned back, his gaze drifting to the horizon where the twin suns hung low. "The hunt was relentless. I lost many good friends that day. One of them, Drell, had a knack for camouflage. He could blend into any environment. But the stalkers were smarter than we anticipated. They worked together, luring us into traps, using our own strengths against us." The tension grew thicker as Jerk recounted how they had devised a plan to counter the Ashen Stalkers. Using their own ingenuity, they crafted traps of their own, baiting the creatures into the open. But nothing could prepare them for the horror that would soon unfold. "The trap worked, but we were too late," he continued, the pain etched in his features. "Drell was caught in a deadly ambush. I watched him struggle, heard his screams as the stalkers closed in. I wanted to save him, but I was too far. We all were. We lost more than just a comrade that day. We lost our faith in victory." An uneasy silence settled over the gathering. The soldiers, accustomed to the ease of Voria, could barely fathom the weight of Jarek's experience. A few shifted uncomfortably, their confidence shaken by the vividness of his tale. "But what did you do?" Rhynak pressed, desperation threading his voice. "How did you survive?" Jarek smiled, a weary grin that didn't reach his eyes. "We adapted, just like the stalkers. I remember finding a nearby cave, deep and dark. We used the terrain to our advantage, forcing the stalkers into our traps, creating barricades of rock and vines. We fought back with everything we had." His voice grew fierce, passionate. In the end, it was not just about survival. It was about becoming a part of that world, understanding it, respecting its dangers. Every creature, every shadow, had a role to play in the cycle of life and death. If you don't respect that, you become prey yourself. The soldiers were entranced, drawn into the gravity of Jarek's narrative. They began to exchange glances, their minds racing as they processed the implications of what they had heard. To them, the concept of facing such horrors felt both thrilling and terrifying, a test of their own resilience. As the day turned to twilight, Jarek concluded his tale. "Remember this, every story has its shadows. Your strength lies not just in your weapons, but in your understanding of the world around you. Prepare for the unknown, for the darkness that can swallow you whole. Only then can you truly emerge victorious." The atmosphere shifted. The Vorians' initial excitement had morphed into a mix of respect and determination. They were no longer just soldiers in a picturesque land. They were warriors on the brink of an understanding that transcended their bright, sheltered lives. Lurak stepped forward, fire igniting in his vibrant eyes. "Thank you, Jarek. We will heed your words. We may be from a world of beauty, but we will prepare for the worst. We will not be caught unawares." Jarek nodded, pride swelling in his chest. He could see the resolve building among them, a spark ignited by his stories. They might be warriors of beauty, but he sensed they were ready to become warriors of strength. And somewhere in the depths of the night, shadows loomed. The Deathworlds were not far away, lurking just beyond the fringes of their idyllic home. The thrill of danger was alive in the air, and for the first time in ages, Jarek felt the flicker of hope. Together, they would face whatever horrors awaited them. Little did they know, the greatest challenges were yet to come. As the stars blinked to life overhead, the echoes of Jarek's stories lingered in the air, a reminder that in every corner of the universe, darkness existed, waiting for the brave to rise against it. The following days on Voria Prime were filled with a growing sense of urgency. Jarek Voss, now an unintentional mentor to the Vorians, found himself immersed in training exercises with the eager soldiers. They practiced tactical maneuvers and survival strategies, pushing the limits of their knowledge and skills. With each passing day, Jarek felt a mixture of pride and trepidation as he witnessed their resolve harden. The pristine beauty of Voria Prime, with its vibrant flora and fauna, stood in stark contrast to the grim tales Jarek had shared. But beneath the surface lay an undercurrent of tension. Rumors spread among the ranks about a potential incursion from an unknown force, a sign that their idyllic world was no longer as safe as it once seemed. One evening, as twilight draped the land in deep indigo, Jarek gathered the soldiers once more. They settled around a large, glowing fire that cast flickering shadows on their faces. The air buzzed with excitement and anticipation. "Tonight," Jarek began, his voice steady, "I want to prepare you for something even darker than what I've shared. This is not just a matter of beasts and monsters. It's about the very essence of survival." Lurak's eyes glimmered with a mix of curiosity and apprehension. "What do you mean, Jarek? Are there worse things than the Ashen Stalkers?" Jarek paused, searching for the right words. "Yes, there are foes that are not just physical. They can manipulate the very fabric of reality, prey on your fears, and turn friends against each other. On the Deathworld of Calthrax, I encountered something far more insidious, a creature known as the Veilstrider." A murmur rippled through the group. Jarek leaned closer to the fire, shadows dancing across his weathered face. "The Veilstrider is a master of deception. It can project illusions that feel utterly real, feeding on your deepest fears and desires. I lost many comrades to its machinations, not to its claws or teeth, but to the nightmares it unleashed within their minds. The soldiers exchanged glances, their excitement turning into a palpable fear. How do you fight something like that? Reinach asked, his voice tight with anxiety. You must learn to trust your instincts above all else, Jerk replied, the weight of his experience heavy in the air. When you see something that feels off, question it. Don't let it ensnare you. Keep your focus on your team. Together, you are stronger than any illusion. Lurak nodded, determination replacing his earlier fear. We will stand together, Jerk, whatever it takes. As the night deepened, Jerk shared more stories of the Veilstrider, tales of friends lost to confusion and despair. The more he spoke, the more he could see the Vorians internalizing his lessons, their resolve crystallizing into something powerful. But the tales weren't merely for entertainment. Jerk's heart raced as he sensed a looming darkness, an urgency that whispered of an approaching storm. He knew it was only a matter of time before they faced their own shadows. The following days were filled with grueling training exercises, reinforcing the lessons Jerk had imparted. They practiced scenarios that tested their mental fortitude, forging bonds among the soldiers. Lurak, Reinach, and others formed a close-knit unit, their camaraderie strengthening with each shared hardship. One fateful afternoon, while Jerk was overseeing a simulation involving ambush tactics, a sudden alarm blared throughout the encampment, piercing the serene atmosphere. A klaxon echoed across the lush landscape, its mechanical voice urgent and frantic. Attention, unidentified craft entering Voria Prime's atmosphere. All units to defensive positions. Jerk's heart sank. He felt the familiar chill of anticipation wash over him. This is it, he muttered to himself, glancing at the soldiers. Stay sharp, and remember your training. The soldiers, eyes wide with adrenaline, rushed to their stations. The air crackled with tension as they prepared for the unknown. Jerk took a moment to breathe deeply, grounding himself in the present. He could feel the weight of responsibility pressing down on him. These young warriors were counting on him. As they gathered at a command post, Lurak barked orders, ensuring everyone was in position. Jerk, what do you think we're facing? He asked, urgency lacing his tone. Could be anything, Jerk replied, scanning the skies. But we must be ready for the worst. A flash of light streaked across the sky, followed by a deafening roar. The soldiers shielded their eyes as a massive ship descended, its hull shimmering like liquid metal. It landed with a thunderous thud, sending ripples through the ground. The moment the ramp lowered, a wave of unease washed over Jerk. Shadows moved within the ship, and as the figures emerged, he recognized their menacing forms. Tall, spindly beings with elongated limbs and piercing eyes, they exuded an aura of cold intelligence. Zarathians, Jerk whispered, a chill running down his spine. They're here. The Vorian soldiers exchanged nervous glances. What are they? Reinach asked, his voice barely a whisper. Ruthless conquerors, Jerk replied, his voice steady. They seek to dominate worlds and exploit their resources. They're not like the creatures of the Deathworlds. They are cunning and calculated. The Zarathians stepped forward, their movements fluid and deliberate. The leader, a tall figure adorned in obsidian armor, raised a hand, and the soldiers instinctively reached for their weapons. Stay your hands, the leader said, its voice a chilling blend of echoes. We come in peace at least for now. Jerk's instincts flared. What do you want? He demanded, stepping forward, his imposing presence challenging the alien leader. We are here to assess your world's potential, the Zarathian replied, its eyes gleaming with predatory interest. To evaluate if it is worthy of our protection. Lurak's grip tightened on his weapon. Protection or domination? The Zarathian's lips curled into a mirthless smile. We have no need for domination yet, but your kind may require assistance in the trials to come. Trials? Jerk echoed, suspicion coursing through him. What do you know about our trials? The Zarathian's gaze sharpened. We are aware of the creatures that lurk in your shadows, the beasts and horrors that lie in wait. We have seen your resilience, but we offer a choice. Join us, and we will help you face the impending darkness." Jerk clenched his fists. "We don't need your help. We will fight our own battles." The Zarathian chuckled, a sound that sent shivers down Jerk's spine. "Very well. But remember, the Veilstrider and its kind are not to be taken lightly. You may soon find that your will alone cannot protect you from the nightmares that await." With that, the Zarathians turned and retreated into their ship, leaving an unsettling silence in their wake. Jerk could feel the tension in the air, thick and suffocating. "What do we do now?" Lorak asked, uncertainty coloring his voice. "Prepare for the worst," Jerk replied, his heart heavy with the weight of the Zarathians' warning. "They may be watching us. We need to fortify our defenses and train harder." The next few days were a blur of preparation and unease. The Vorian soldiers trained with relentless determination, pushing their limits as they honed their skills. Jerk led them through increasingly complex scenarios, combining physical challenges with psychological ones, ensuring they were ready for any eventuality. But as the days turned into nights, a growing darkness loomed over Voria Prime. Jerk could feel it, a heaviness in the air, a gnawing dread that whispered of impending danger. The echoes of the Zarathians' warning lingered in his mind, a constant reminder that they were not alone in this fight. One night, as Jerk sat alone by the glowing embers of the campfire, he was approached by Lorak. The young officer's expression was serious, determination etched across his face. "Jerk, I need to talk to you." "Of course," Jerk replied, gesturing for him to sit. "What's on your mind?" Lorak took a deep breath, collecting his thoughts. "I've been thinking about the Veilstrider. If it's as dangerous as you say, we can't just wait for it to strike. We need to find a way to draw it out, to confront it on our terms." Jerk nodded, impressed by Lorak's resolve. "That's a bold plan, but it requires careful consideration. The Veilstrider is cunning. It will twist our fears against us. We need to be prepared for its illusions." "Then let's create a trap," Lorak suggested, his eyes bright with determination. "We can lure it into a controlled environment, somewhere we can use our training to our advantage." "Your instincts are sharp, Lorak," Jerk acknowledged. "But it won't be easy. We'll need to simulate the conditions of a Deathworld chaos and uncertainty." Lorak grinned, excitement bubbling within him. "I'll rally the others. We can prepare for it together." As Lorak left to gather, the atmosphere at the Voria encampment shifted in the days following Lorak's bold proposal. A renewed sense of purpose infused the soldiers, propelling them into a frenzy of activity. They scavenged materials, crafted traps, and devised strategies, all while Jerk watched with a mixture of pride and concern. Each day, they pushed their limits further, simulating the conditions of a Deathworld. Jerk led them through scenarios designed to evoke fear and confusion, using sounds and visual projections to mimic the chaos of the Veilstrider's illusions. They faced shadowy figures that whispered doubts and taunted their weaknesses, forcing the soldiers to confront their deepest fears head-on. As night fell, they would gather around the fire, exhausted but invigorated by their progress. Lorak often took the lead in discussions, his confidence growing as he inspired his comrades to embrace the challenge. One evening, while the stars twinkled like distant diamonds overhead, Jerk shared more tales from his past. He spoke of a night on Calthrax when he and his team had faced the Veilstrider for the first time. "It was a night like this," he recalled, his voice low and steady. "We had set a trap, believing we could outsmart it, but it twisted our surroundings, making the familiar feel foreign. We lost our sense of direction, our trust in one another. It was like being caught in a waking dream." "What happened?" Rhynak asked, eyes wide with anticipation. Two of my comrades, brave soldiers, began to turn on each other, convinced the other was the Veilstrider. In the chaos, we lost sight of our objective. It fed on our distrust and confusion until we were all but lost. It took every ounce of strength and clarity to break through its illusions." Jerk looked around at the faces of the soldiers, seeing both fear and determination. "Remember this, in the midst of chaos, Hold on to the truth of who you are and who you fight for. That will be your anchor. With their preparations underway, the tension in the camp grew. Each soldier sensed that the confrontation with the Veilstrider was imminent, a storm gathering just beyond the horizon. On the 5th night after Lurak's proposal, they finally felt ready. The makeshift training ground had been set up in a secluded area of the forest, surrounded by natural barriers to contain any potential chaos. Jerk stood at the center, watching as the soldiers gathered in a circle, their faces illuminated by the flickering light of torches. Lurak stepped forward, his voice steady. "Tonight, we confront the Veilstrider. We will draw it out and face it together. Remember your training, trust one another, and don't let fear take hold." The soldiers nodded, their resolve palpable. They had worked hard to prepare for this moment, and now it was time to put their skills to the test. Jerk raised his hand, calling for silence. "Before we begin, I want to remind you of something crucial. The Veilstrider will play on your fears. It will twist your surroundings and challenge your perceptions. Stay vigilant and remember our training. Trust your instincts." As the last words hung in the air, Jerk felt the weight of the moment. They had all trained hard, but he could see the flickers of doubt in their eyes. They were warriors, but they were also young and untested against such a cunning adversary. "Let's start," Lurak said, his voice firm. "I'll lead the way." The soldiers moved into formation, each taking their designated positions. Jerk watched as Lurak led the group deeper into the woods, the shadows growing thicker around them. The sounds of rustling leaves and distant creatures faded as they ventured further, leaving an eerie silence in their wake. Suddenly, the atmosphere shifted. A chilling breeze swept through the trees, carrying with it an unsettling tension. Jerk's instincts flared. "Stay alert," he murmured, his eyes scanning the darkness. As they reached a clearing, the air felt heavy, almost electric. Lurak signaled for the group to halt, his expression serious. "This is the spot. We'll use the traps we set up, and I'll signal when we're ready to initiate the draw." Just as they began to set their positions, a sudden distortion rippled through the air. The world seemed to twist, and the trees around them flickered like a faulty hologram. Jerk's heart raced. The Veilstrider was near. "Hold your ground," Jerk shouted, sensing the danger close at hand. In an instant, the forest transformed. Shadows elongated, twisting into grotesque shapes. The soldiers could hear whispers, soft and seductive, echoing from the depths of the woods. "Lurak, do you see that?" Rhynak said, his voice trembling as he pointed to a shadowy figure darting between the trees. "Focus, it's trying to disorient us," Lurak commanded, but Jerk could see the uncertainty creeping into his eyes. "Remember what I said," Jerk urged, stepping forward. "Don't let it play on your fears." The shadows coalesced into a form, a creature with shifting features, eyes glinting like shards of glass. The Veilstrider stepped into the clearing, its presence both mesmerizing and terrifying. It radiated an aura of deep darkness, a palpable dread that washed over the soldiers. "Look at you, brave little warriors," the Veilstrider crooned, its voice an alluring whisper that echoed around them. "So eager to confront the shadows. But do you truly understand the darkness that resides within?" "Stand together," Jerk shouted, his voice cutting through the veil of illusions. "Don't listen to it." The creature's form shifted, morphing into the likeness of their fallen comrades, their faces twisted in anguish. "Why did you let me die?" one of the apparitions cried, its voice filled with sorrow. "You could have saved me." "No," Lurak shouted, shaking his head. "That's not real." But the illusion was powerful. Another soldier faltered, confusion etching itself across his features. "Is it really you?" he whispered, reaching out to the specter. Jerk surged forward, grabbing the soldier's arm. "Don't. It's trying to confuse you. Trust your instincts." The Veilstrider laughed, a sound that sent chills down their spines. "Your bonds are fragile, dear warriors. I can break them with a mere whisper. Why not embrace the darkness?" With a swift motion, it unleashed a wave of darkness that enveloped the clearing, suffocating their senses. Jerk felt the oppressive weight closing in around them, pushing against their resolve. "Break the illusion," he shouted, forcing his voice to remain steady. "Focus on the truth. Focus on each other." The soldiers began to rally, finding strength in their unity. Lorak shouted orders, urging his comrades to regroup and center themselves. One by one, they began to shake off the Veilstrider's influence, holding on to the bonds they had forged in training. "Use the traps," Lorak urged, rallying them back to their plan. With newfound determination, the soldiers sprang into action. They activated their makeshift traps, a series of ropes and nets designed to ensnare the creature. Jarek felt a surge of hope. Their training was paying off. As the Veilstrider lunged forward, it found itself caught in the nets, thrashing against the restraints. But even as it struggled, it shifted form, attempting to escape through deception. "Is this truly what you want?" it hissed, its voice dripping with malice. "To fight against your own fears? You will never win." Jarek stepped closer, channeling the strength of his past battles. "We will win. We have each other, and that is stronger than any illusion you can conjure." With a fierce determination, Lorak and the others closed in, keeping their focus on the real enemy. They pressed forward, their bonds and shared purpose weaving a shield against the Veilstrider's manipulations. The creature writhed, its form flickering between grotesque shapes, but the soldiers held firm. They had come too far to let fear dictate their fate. "Now!" Jarek shouted, the command cutting through the chaos. "Push forward." Together, they tightened their grip on the ropes, working as one to restrain the Veilstrider. It roared in frustration, its form twisting in an effort to escape, but the soldiers stood united, their resolve hardening with each passing moment. Just when it seemed the creature might break free, Jarek raised his hand, signaling the final push. On 3, 1, 2, 3. With a collective effort, they pulled the nets tighter, and the Veilstrider let out a bone-chilling scream, a sound that echoed through the night like a death knell. The darkness around them began to dissolve, and the creature's form shimmered, flickering in and out of focus. "You cannot win," it howled, but its voice was beginning to waver. "I will return." With one last burst of effort, the soldiers pulled with everything they had, and the Veilstrider's form disintegrated into a cloud of shadows, dissipating into the night. Breathless and trembling, the soldiers fell silent, the weight of what they had just faced sinking in. The clearing, once filled with chaos, now felt eerily calm. Did we do it?" Rhynak whispered, looking around at his comrades. Lorak turned. The aftermath of the confrontation with the Veilstrider hung heavily in the air, a mixture of exhilaration and disbelief coursing through the ranks of the Vorian soldiers. They had faced an embodiment of their worst fears and emerged victorious, but the price of that victory weighed on their hearts. As they stood in the clearing, still catching their breath, Jarek scanned the group. Their faces were a blend of relief and lingering uncertainty. The forest, once an oppressive landscape of shadows, now felt both alien and familiar. "Everyone, gather around," Jarek called, his voice steady. "We need to process what just happened." The soldiers clustered together, their expressions a mix of triumph and fatigue. Lorak stepped forward, the light from the torches flickering over his face. "Did we really defeat it? Is it gone for good?" "It won't come back tonight," Jarek replied, his voice firm. "But make no mistake, it will return. These creatures are persistent. We need to be ready for whatever it throws at us next." Rhynak shook his head, still trying to wrap his mind around the experience. "But we worked together. We faced our fears." "True," Jarek said, nodding. "But fear is a tool for the Veilstrider. It will find a way to exploit any cracks in our unity. Trust and clarity must remain our strongest weapons." "Then what's next?" Lorak asked, the weight of leadership settling back onto his shoulders. "How do we prepare for its return?" Jarek looked at the stars above, their distant light a reminder of the vast universe they inhabited. "We need to train harder. We must learn to recognize the signs of its return and prepare our minds as well as our bodies. The shadows it casts are not just physical. They can seep into your thoughts and turn friend against friend." The soldiers nodded, the gravity of Jerk's words settling in. They had won a battle, but the war was far from over. In the following weeks, the camp transformed into a hive of activity. The Vorians focused not just on physical training, but on mental fortitude, learning techniques to confront their fears and maintain their focus. Jerk introduced meditation and strategy exercises designed to reinforce their bonds and sharpen their instincts. Each night, they would gather around the fire, sharing stories not just of triumph, but of their fears and doubts. Lorak took the lead, fostering an environment of openness and vulnerability. The more they shared, the stronger they became. One night, Rhynak spoke up, his voice wavering. "I used to fear that I wasn't strong enough, that I wouldn't live up to the expectations of being a soldier. I saw the illusions of the Veilstrider, and for a moment, I thought I'd let my team down." Lorak placed a reassuring hand on Rhynak's shoulder. "You didn't let us down. You stood with us when it mattered most. That's what being a soldier is about, trusting in one another." Jerk watched, heartened by their growth. These soldiers were becoming more than just warriors. They were a family, united in purpose and experience. But despite their progress, Jerk couldn't shake the feeling of unease. The Zarathians had warned of greater dangers lurking in the shadows, and he felt a storm brewing on the horizon. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm glow over the camp, a flicker of movement caught Jerk's eye. He turned to see a lone figure approaching a soldier from the ranks, his expression troubled. "Jerk," the soldier called, urgency lacing his voice. "There's something you need to see." Intrigued, Jerk followed him deeper into the camp. They arrived at a gathering of soldiers, their expressions tense as they huddled around a holographic projector. As Jerk approached, the image came into focus, a recording of the Zarathians' ship descending on Voria Prime. "What is this?" Jerk asked, his brow furrowing. The soldier gestured to the screen. "It's a surveillance feed we intercepted. We were monitoring their ship, and look." The image showed the Zarathians speaking amongst themselves, their movements swift and calculated. Jerk leaned closer, catching snippets of their conversation. "They're planning something," the soldier whispered, eyes wide. "They spoke of exploiting the chaos of our world, something about harnessing the power of the Veilstrider." Jerk's heart raced. "They're trying to manipulate the situation to their advantage. If they can control the Veilstrider, they could use it against us." Lorak joined them, peering at the hologram. "What do? We can't let them gain that kind of power." "We need to confront them," Jerk replied, his voice firm. "We can't let fear dictate our actions, but we need a plan." The soldiers around them nodded, determination flooding their expressions. Jerk felt the weight of leadership settle once more on his shoulders. The following day, they held a meeting to devise a strategy. Soldiers gathered around a large table, their eyes focused on Jerk as he laid out the plan. "We need to confront the Zarathians and demand answers," he said, pacing before the group. "But we can't go in blindly. We need to gather intelligence and prepare ourselves for whatever they throw our way." Lorak raised a hand. "What if they refuse to cooperate? What if they see us as a threat?" "Then we must be prepared to defend ourselves," Jerk replied, his voice steady. "But we must approach them with an open mind. If we can find common ground, perhaps we can work together against the Veilstrider and any other threats that emerge." Rhynak nodded, determination etched on his face. "We have to make them see that we're not their enemies. We want to protect our home." Jerk smiled, heartened by their resolve. "Exactly. We'll approach with caution and strength, but our goal is to understand their intentions." As they finalized their strategy, the sense of purpose enveloped them like a warm cloak. Jerk felt a surge of hope. They were no longer just soldiers preparing for battle. They were warriors ready to forge their own fate. The next day, they set out toward the Zarathian encampment, a series of sleek, metallic structures nestled within the dense Voria forests. As they approached, Jerk could see the imposing figures of the Zarathians moving about, their eyes glinting in the sunlight. Lorak took the lead, his expression serious. "Stay close, and remember the plan. We need to show strength, but we must also demonstrate that we come in peace." As they neared the entrance to the Zarathian camp, a guard stepped forward, eyeing them with suspicion. "What is your purpose here?" the guard demanded, his voice cold. Jarek stepped forward, raising his hands in a gesture of peace. "We seek to speak with your leader. We have information that could benefit both our peoples." The guard hesitated, glancing back toward the camp. "You will wait here." Moments later, a figure emerged from the shadows. The Zarathian leader, cloaked in dark armor, strode forward with an air of authority. "You return," it said, its voice echoing with an unsettling calm. "What do you want?" Jarek took a deep breath, steadying himself. "We come seeking an alliance, but we also demand answers. We know of your plans to exploit the chaos of our world. We will not allow you to use the Veilstrider against us." The Zarathian leader regarded him with an inscrutable expression. "You presume much, warrior. We are not your enemies." "But you have aligned yourself with the Veilstrider," Lorak interjected, his voice firm. "If you intend to control it, we cannot trust you." The leader's eyes narrowed, its gaze piercing. "The Veilstrider is a force of nature, an embodiment of the darkness that dwells within all worlds. We seek to harness its power, to prevent it from destroying your kind." Jarek felt a chill creep up his spine. "You're suggesting that controlling the Veilstrider is the solution?" "Understanding it is key," the Zarathian leader replied, its voice smooth. "We have studied it for millennia. It can be a weapon or a tool, depending on how one wields it." "But at what cost?" Jarek asked, his voice rising. "You would play with forces beyond your control. We've seen what the Veilstrider can do." The leader regarded him thoughtfully, and Jarek could sense a flicker of respect in its gaze. "Perhaps you are not as naive as you seem, but your fear clouds your judgment. We could help you defeat it, but only if you are willing to cooperate." Jarek exchanged glances with his fellow soldiers. Lorak stepped forward, a glimmer of hope in his eyes. "Then let's work together. We need to protect our home, and perhaps we can find a way to contain the Veilstrider without resorting to control." The Zarathian leader nodded slowly. "Very well, let us discuss terms. Together, we may forge a path forward." As they began to negotiate, Jarek felt a cautious optimism bloom within him. They were stepping into the unknown, but they were not alone. The bond between the Vorians and Zarathians could lead to. The negotiations with the Zarathians took place over several days, each session a delicate dance of words and intentions. Jarek, Lorak, and the soldiers from Voria found themselves in a spacious tent adorned with strange symbols and illuminated by bioluminescent plants. The atmosphere was charged with a mix of hope and tension. Jarek sat at the table, flanked by Lorak and Rhynak, while the Zarathian leader, who introduced itself as Threxis, presided over the discussions with an air of authority. Each day, they delved deeper into the nature of the Veilstrider, sharing knowledge that revealed both their strengths and vulnerabilities. "Understanding the Veilstrider is paramount," Threxis asserted one evening, its voice resonating with an otherworldly calm. "It feeds on fear, chaos, and distrust. To combat it, we must learn to navigate the very darkness it embodies." "What do you propose?" Jarek asked, leaning forward. "How do we harness its power without succumbing to it?" Threxis regarded him with a piercing gaze. "We have developed techniques to focus our will, to anchor ourselves in reality amidst its illusions. But this requires trust not just between our peoples, but within yourselves." Lorak nodded, his expression serious. "Trust has been hard-won among our soldiers. We face the Veilstrider and emerge together, but we know that darkness lingers." "Then let us train together," Threxis suggested, a hint of enthusiasm creeping into its voice. "We can combine our knowledge, blending our strategies to forge a path forward. It will not be easy. The Veilstrider will not wait idly while we prepare." As the days turned into weeks, the soldiers from Voria and the Zarathians began to form an unlikely bond. Training sessions took place in the mornings, where they practiced defensive maneuvers and learned to control their thoughts against the encroaching chaos. Jarek was amazed by the Zorathians' fluid movements, their techniques honed through centuries of discipline. They taught the Vorians to channel their fear into focused energy, turning anxiety into a potent tool for clarity. One evening, as they wrapped up a grueling training session, Rhynak approached Jarek, breathless. "I feel stronger, more aware. It's like the Zorathians are showing us a different way to fight our battles." Jarek smiled, pride swelling in his chest. "That's because we're learning together. Each of us brings something valuable to the table. Their knowledge complements our instinct." As they progressed, Jarek couldn't shake the feeling that something darker loomed just out of sight. Whispers of unrest circulated among the soldiers. Some felt uneasy about trusting the Zorathians, fearing betrayal when they were at their most vulnerable. One night, while the moon hung high in the sky, Jarek gathered his closest comrades around a campfire. He could see the shadows flickering across their faces, each line a reminder of the challenges they faced. "Do you trust them?" Rhynak asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "The Zorathian, can we truly rely on them to help us?" Jarek took a deep breath, considering his words carefully. "Trust is earned, not given. We've seen the darkness they wield, but we must also recognize their willingness to share their knowledge. They have a different perspective on the Veilstrider. We can learn from it." "But what if they're using us?" Lorak interjected, concern etched on his face. "What if they want to turn the Veilstrider against us?" "Then we must be vigilant," Jarek replied, his tone resolute. "We'll keep our eyes open. But if we allow fear to cloud our judgment, we risk missing an opportunity. We can't fight a battle divided." The soldiers nodded, each lost in their thoughts. They were at a crossroads, teetering between caution and courage. As the weeks progressed, the atmosphere in the camp began to shift. The training sessions became more intense, with both Vorians and Zorathians pushing one another to their limits. Bonds were forming, laughter shared, and a sense of camaraderie blossomed amid the shadows. But beneath the surface, Jarek could sense an undercurrent of tension. Some of the Vorians remained skeptical, whispers of dissent circulating quietly among them. He noticed a group huddled together late one night, their expressions grave. Curiosity piqued, he approached. "What's going on?" he asked, concern lacing his voice. One soldier, a wiry young man named Voss, glanced up, his eyes filled with uncertainty. "We're worried, Jarek. The Zorathians may not have our best interest at heart. They speak of the Veilstrider like it's a tool, but what if they're planning to use it against us?" Jarek considered his words carefully. "I understand your fears, but we've faced the Veilstrider together. Our victory wasn't just luck. It was our unity that brought us through. If we allow mistrust to take root, we risk falling apart." "Maybe you're right," Voss replied hesitantly. "But I can't shake the feeling that something's off." "Then keep your eyes open," Jarek urged. "But don't let that fear dictate your actions. Our strength lies in our bonds, and we must fight for them." With that, Jarek returned to his tent, his mind racing. He knew the dangers of mistrust, but he couldn't ignore the whispers that lingered in the shadows. The next morning, a sense of foreboding hung over the camp. Threxus called for a gathering, its expression grave as it stepped onto a makeshift platform. "Warriors of Voria," it began, its voice echoing across the clearing, "we stand on the precipice of a great conflict. The Veilstrider is restless, and we have received intelligence that it may strike soon. We must prepare." A murmur rippled through the crowd, and Jarek felt a knot tighten in his stomach. "What kind of intelligence?" he shouted, stepping forward. Threxus met his gaze, a flicker of something unreadable in its eyes. "Our scouts have reported sightings of the Veilstrider's influence spreading. It appears to be drawing power from the fears of both our peoples. We must unite our strengths now more than ever." "And what of your true intentions?" Lorak challenged, stepping beside Jarek. "How do we know you won't exploit this chaos for your own ends?" Threxus's expression hardened, its gaze unyielding. "You question my commitment? We have shared our knowledge, and I stand before you as a testament to our alliance. But make no mistake, this is not a negotiation. We must act swiftly to combat this growing darkness. The tension in the air was palpable. Jarek exchanged glances with his comrades, sensing the unease that had taken root among the soldiers. "What do we do?" Rhynek whispered, anxiety creeping into his voice. "We prepare," Jarek replied, his heart racing. "But we do so with our eyes open. We can't afford to let fear dictate our actions." In the following days, the camp transformed into a flurry of activity. Soldiers trained harder, honing their skills to combat the Veilstrider's influence. Jarek and Lurak worked closely with Threxus and its warriors, forging plans to counteract the creature's manipulations. Yet, as they worked together, Jarek felt the shadows of doubt creeping back in. He couldn't shake the feeling that the Zorathians were holding something back, and the unease among the Vorians was growing. One night, while inspecting the perimeter, Jarek encountered a figure in the shadows: Voss, the young soldier who had approached him earlier. "Jarek," Voss hissed, urgency in his voice. "I've been watching the Zorathians. I think they're planning something." "What do you mean?" Jarek asked, his heart quickening. "I overheard them speaking about a ritual," Voss continued, glancing around nervously. "They plan to summon the Veilstrider, to harness its power directly. It's not just about control, it's about domination." Jarek felt a chill run down his spine. "Are you certain?" "I am. We need to warn the others. They can't be trusted," Voss urged, desperation in his voice. Jarek weighed his options, the gravity of the situation pressing down on him. "If this is true, we have to confront Threxus. But we must do so carefully. We can't risk a full confrontation without evidence." As they made their way back to the main camp, Jarek's mind raced. What if Voss was right? If the Zorathians were indeed planning to summon the Veilstrider, it would spell disaster for both their peoples. The following day, Jarek convened a meeting with Lurak, Rhynek, and a few other trusted soldiers. They gathered around a table laden with maps and notes, tension palpable in the air. "I've received disturbing information," Jarek began, his voice steady. "Voss believes the Zorathians are planning to summon the Veilstrider for their own purposes. If this is true, we must act swiftly." Lurak frowned, his brow furrowed in concern. "If they plan to summon it, that means they're not only willing to." Lurak's expression darkened as Jarek shared Voss's revelations. "If the Zorathians truly intend to summon the Veilstrider, we cannot let that happen. We've already seen the devastation it can cause." Rhynek nodded, his hands clenched into fists. "We have to confront Threxus. We need to know the truth." Jarek could feel the weight of leadership pressing heavily on his shoulders. "Agreed. But we need to approach this carefully. If we confront them without evidence, it could lead to a conflict that we're not prepared for." One of the other soldiers, a seasoned warrior named Kira, spoke up. "What if we set up surveillance? We can gather more information before making any accusations. If the Zorathians are indeed plotting something, we need to be ready to act." "That's a good idea," Jarek replied, feeling a spark of hope. "We'll form small groups to monitor their activities. If they're planning to summon the Veilstrider, we need to catch them in the act." As they began to outline their plan, Jarek felt a flicker of determination amidst the uncertainty. They were warriors, and they wouldn't allow fear to consume them. They would fight back. Over the next few days, the atmosphere in the camp grew tenser. Vorian soldiers paired with Zorathians for training sessions, but beneath the surface, mistrust simmered. Jarek and his comrades moved stealthily, keeping watch over Threxus and its followers, hoping to catch a glimpse of their true intentions. One evening, as dusk settled over the camp, Jarek and Rhynek took their position behind a cluster of trees near the Zorathian encampment. The air was thick with anticipation, and Jarek could feel his heart pounding in his chest. "Do you really think they'll reveal their plans?" Rhynek whispered, his voice tense. "If they're plotting something, they'll need to discuss it in private," Jarek replied, straining to listen to the sounds coming from the Zorathian tent. Hours passed, and just as the stars began to twinkle overhead, Jarek's breath caught in his throat. He spotted Threxus emerging from the shadows, flanked by several other Zorathians. They were deep in conversation, their voices low but urgent. Jarek and Rhynak exchanged glances, their eyes wide with the thrill of discovery. They leaned in closer, straining to catch the words. "The time is near," Threxus said, its voice barely above a whisper. "We have prepared the necessary rituals to summon the Veilstrider. Once we harness its power, no one will stand in our way." Jarek felt a surge of anger and fear course through him. This was the confirmation they needed. But before he could signal Rhynak, another voice spoke up, sharper than the others. "What of the Vorians? They won't let us proceed without a fight. They are too stubborn to see the potential in this power." Threxus responded, its tone laced with impatience. "Let them come. We will show them the true meaning of strength. Fear is a tool, and we will use it to bend them to our will." Jarek's heart raced, realization dawning. They were planning to use the Veilstrider not just as a weapon, but to subjugate both their peoples. "We have to warn the others," Rhynak whispered, urgency lacing his voice. As they turned to leave, Jarek suddenly froze, his instincts kicking in. "Wait," he hissed. "We can't just rush in. We need to gather more evidence." But as he turned back to watch the Zorathians, he realized they were not alone. A shadow detached itself from the darkness, revealing another figure, one of the Vorians. "Voss!" Jarek exclaimed, but it was too late. Voss had stepped forward, eyes wide with alarm. "What are you planning?" he demanded, his voice rising. "You're going to summon the Veilstrider." Threxus's gaze snapped to Voss, and a predatory smile spread across its face. "Ah, another curious warrior. You've wandered into dangerous territory." "Leave him alone," Rhynak shouted, stepping protectively in front of Voss. "Enough," Threxus barked, the authority in its voice silencing the night. "You know not what you are meddling with." Jarek felt a rush of adrenaline. "We know exactly what you're planning, Threxus. You intend to use the Veilstrider against us, and we won't allow it." A tense silence followed, the air crackling with tension. Threxus stepped closer, eyes glinting dangerously. "You think you can stand against us? You are nothing but pawns in a game far greater than your comprehension." "Game?" Voss spat, anger rising. "You're playing with lives, Threxus. We won't be your puppets." Suddenly, without warning, Threxus raised its hand, summoning shadows that coiled around it like living tendrils. "Then you will face the consequences of your defiance." Before Jarek could react, the shadows lunged toward them, wrapping around Voss and Rhynak. Jarek dove forward, but the darkness engulfed them, pulling them into an abyss of fear. Jarek fought against the oppressive shadows, his heart racing. He could hear Rynak's voice, strained and desperate, calling out for him. "Jarek, get us out of here!" "Hold on," Jarek shouted, focusing his mind amidst the chaos. He could feel the Veilstrider's influence, its whispers trying to sow doubt and despair. But he had faced this darkness before. Drawing on the strength of his comrades, he focused on the bonds they had forged. He remembered their training, the lessons about channeling fear into strength. "Rhynak, Voss, listen to my voice," Jarek called, forcing clarity into the chaos. "We are stronger together. We can break free." He felt a surge of energy course through him as he concentrated, forming a mental link with Rhynak and Voss. The shadows hesitated, momentarily faltering against their collective will. "Fight it," Jarek urged, the bond between them solidifying like iron. "We are not alone." With a surge of will, Jarek pushed against the darkness, and the shadows recoiled, releasing their grip. The three of them burst free, collapsing to the ground as the oppressive weight lifted. "Now," Jarek shouted, scrambling to his feet. "We need to warn the others before it's too late." As they raced back to camp, the adrenaline coursing through Jarek's veins fueled his determination. They reached the heart of the camp, where soldiers were gathered, their expressions a mixture of confusion and concern. "Everyone, listen," Jarek called, stepping onto a makeshift platform. "We have to act now. The Zorathians are planning to summon the Veilstrider to use against us. We cannot allow this to happen." A murmur of disbelief rippled through the crowd. but Jerk pressed on. I know this sounds impossible, but we've seen it for ourselves. They intend to use fear as a weapon, and we must unite against it. Lurak stepped forward, his voice steady. If what Jerk says is true, we can't afford to waste time. We need to prepare for a confrontation. But what if it's a trap? One soldier interjected, skepticism creeping into his tone. What if we're walking into their hands? We'll go in prepared, Jerk replied, his eyes locking onto those of his comrades. But we can't let fear divide us now. We've trained too hard to let doubt tear us apart. We are stronger together. The soldiers exchanged uncertain glances, but gradually a sense of resolve began to take shape. Jerk felt a flicker of hope amidst the shadows. Gather your weapons and your resolve, Lurak said, voice booming. Tonight, we fight not just for ourselves, but for the future of our worlds. As the soldiers rallied, gathering weapons and forming a plan, Jerk felt the weight of responsibility settle upon him. They were on the brink of something monumental, a confrontation that could determine the fate of both the Vorians and the Zarathians. Under the cover of darkness, Jerk and the soldiers moved silently toward the Zarathian encampment. The air was thick with tension, each heartbeat echoing in the stillness. They approached cautiously, knowing that one misstep could lead to disaster. Stay close, Jerk instructed, his voice low. We need to catch them off guard. As they neared the center of the Zarathian camp, they could see figures moving in the shadows, Zarathians preparing for the ritual. The flickering glow of torches illuminated their ominous forms, and Jerk felt a chill run down his spine. Ready? Lurak whispered, gripping his weapon tightly. Jerk nodded, adrenaline surging through him. On my signal. They watched as Threxus and several other Zarathians stood in a circle, chanting in low, guttural tones. Shadows danced around them, twisting and coiling in response to their words. Now, Jerk shouted, springing forward. They charged into the camp, weapons drawn, a united front against the darkness. The element of surprise was on their side, and the chaos erupted as Jerk and his comrades stormed into the Zarathian camp. The flickering torchlight illuminated the shocked faces of the Zarathians, and for a heartbeat, the chanting stopped. Threxus's eyes widened in surprise, but it quickly regained its composure, raising a hand to signal the others. Prepare yourselves, Threxus shouted, its voice echoing through the night. They come to disrupt our destiny. In an instant, the Zarathians sprang into action, their fluid movements revealing years of disciplined training. Shadows twisted around them, growing thick and dark as they prepared to unleash their power. Jerk felt a surge of fear, but he quickly pushed it aside, focusing on the warriors beside him. Form a line, he commanded. We fight as one. The Vorians responded, organizing themselves into a solid front, weapons ready. Jerk glanced at Lurak, who nodded in understanding. They needed to stand firm, to show their unity against the growing chaos. The first wave of Zarathians surged forward, their shadows coiling around them like serpents. Jerk raised his sword, adrenaline coursing through him. Hold the line. The clash of metal rang through the air as Vorians met Zarathians, each side pushing against the other. Jerk fought fiercely, his training guiding his movements as he parried strikes and countered with precision. Around him, he saw Rhynak and Voss engaged in combat, their faces set with determination. But the Zarathians fought with a different kind of desperation. As they battled, their connection to the Veilstrider grew stronger, feeding on the chaos of the confrontation. Shadows flickered and writhed, attempting to penetrate the minds of the Vorian soldiers. Stay focused, Jerk shouted, his voice rising above the clamor. Remember our training, don't let fear control you. He felt the connection between his comrades and unspoken understanding that fueled their resolve. Each time a soldier faltered under the weight of despair, another would step forward, reinforcing their ranks. Yet, despite their determination, Jerk could see the tide beginning to turn. The Zarathians were drawing on the very fear they sought to unleash, and their shadows began to overwhelm the Vorians. For every Vorian that fell, it seemed the Zarathians grew stronger. Threxus, Jerk shouted, locking eyes with a Zarathian leader across the battlefield. "This isn't the way. You're only feeding the darkness." Threxus laughed, a sound like glass shattering in the night. "You do not understand. The Veilstrider is our ally. With its power, we will conquer this realm." "No," Jerk yelled, feeling a surge of defiance. "You are wrong. We can't let fear control us. We must unite." In that moment, he saw a flicker of doubt in Threxus's eyes, a crack in the facade of its confidence. The shadows around Threxus wavered, hesitating as the Zarathian leader's resolve faltered. Jerk seized the opportunity. "We've faced the Veilstrider before, and we survived. We can face it again together." He turned to his soldiers, rallying their spirits. "Focus on the bonds we've formed. Trust in each other. That is our strength." The Vorian soldiers responded, their resolve hardening as they remembered their victories, the moments when they had stood together against the darkness. They began to push back against the Zarathians, their fear transforming into fierce determination. With a battle cry that echoed through the camp, Jerk charged forward, cutting a path toward Threxus. His comrades followed, a wave of united warriors pushing against the tide of shadows. As they advanced, the battlefield transformed into a chaotic dance of light and dark. The air crackled with energy as Vorians fought with renewed vigor, their weapons shining against the encroaching darkness. Jerk could see Lurak fighting fiercely, his sword flashing as he deflected blows from two Zarathians at once. Rhynak was beside him, matching each strike with unyielding determination. Together, they were a force to be reckoned with. But the shadows were relentless, and as Jerk reached Threxus, he could feel the weight of despair pressing down on him again. "You can't win this battle," he shouted, swinging his sword toward the Zarathian leader. "You're only binding yourself to the darkness." Threxus deflected his blow with a surge of shadow, its expression a mix of fury and confusion. "You're a fool, human. The Veilstrider is the future. Embrace it, and you will know true power." "I don't want your power," Jerk yelled, feeling his heart pound in his chest. "I want freedom. I want to fight for our people, not be controlled by fear." In that moment, something shifted in the air. Jerk felt a surge of energy emanating from the Vorian soldiers as they rallied around him. He could see their fear transform into something else, something brighter. With a fierce determination, Jerk lunged at Threxus again, this time with all the strength he could muster. Their weapons clashed, the sound reverberating through the night as shadows clashed against the will of unity. Around them, the battle raged on, but Jerk felt the tide beginning to turn. The Zarathians, sensing the shift in momentum, hesitated. Their shadows flickered, wavering under the weight of the collective will of the Vorians. "Push forward," Jerk urged, locking eyes with his comrades. "We can break them." As if ignited by his words, the Vorian soldiers surged, driving the Zarathians back. The shadows that had once seemed insurmountable began to falter, retreating as the Vorians pressed their advantage. But Threxus was not finished yet. With a roar of fury, it drew upon the very darkness itself, unleashing a wave of energy that rippled through the air. Shadows spiraled outward, engulfing the battlefield in a tempest of fear. Jerk felt it wash over him, a cold grip tightening around his heart. Memories of doubt and despair surged to the forefront of his mind, threatening to overwhelm him. He stumbled, feeling the weight of the darkness pressing down on him. But then he remembered he was not alone. He felt the presence of his comrades, their strength flowing into him like a lifeline. He could hear their voices, urging him to fight against the despair. "Jerk," Lurak shouted, breaking through the darkness. "Focus on us. We are stronger together." Jerk closed his eyes, drawing on the bond they had forged. He envisioned their shared victories, the laughter, and the determination that had brought them together. With each heartbeat, he felt the darkness begin to recede. "Together," he cried, rallying the Vorian soldiers. "We can overcome this." The Vorian soldiers responded with a roar, their resolve reigniting as they pushed back against the shadows. They focused their will, channeling their energy into a collective force that surged toward Threxus. With renewed vigor, Jarek charged forward once more, determination flooding his veins. He could see Threxus faltering, its confidence shaken as it faced the unified front of the Vorians. "Now," Jarek shouted, raising his sword high. "Together, we will end this." With one final surge of strength, the Vorians pressed forward, their combined will crashing against the shadows. The darkness recoiled, flickering and fading under the relentless tide of unity. Jarek lunged toward Threxus, their weapons clashing with a resounding impact. "You cannot control us," he yelled, his voice filled with defiance. "We will not be your pawns." Threxus, eyes wide with realization, began to falter as the shadows withdrew. "No, this cannot be." But Jarek pressed on, drawing on the strength of his comrades. With a final, determined thrust, he struck Threxus's weapon, sending it flying from its grasp. The Zarathian leader stumbled backward, fear and fury mixing in its expression. "You've made a grave mistake." Jarek felt the surge of power flowing through him, bolstered by the presence of his comrades. "No, Threxus." The mistake was thinking that fear would ever win against unity. In that moment, the tide of the battle shifted decisively. The Vorian soldiers surged forward, their swords raised high as they drove the Zarathians back. The shadows that had once seemed overwhelming began to dissolve, retreating as the Vorians pressed their advantage. As the last of the Zarathians fell back, Threxus stared at Jarek, desperation etched across its face. "This is not the end. The Veilstrider will rise again." Jarek stepped forward, sword pointed directly at Threxus. "And we will be ready to fight it. We will not let fear dictate our fate." With that, he lowered his weapon, sensing the tide of battle fully turning in favor of the Vorians. The remaining Zarathians scattered into the shadows, retreating from the fierce resolve of their foes. As the dust began to settle, Jarek turned to his comrades, a sense of relief flooding over him. They had fought against the darkness and emerged victorious, their bond stronger than ever. Lurak stepped forward, a grin breaking across his face. "We did it." The sounds of battle faded into the night, replaced by a heavy silence that settled over the battlefield. Jarek looked around, taking in the scene. The Vorians were regrouping, their faces a mix of exhaustion and triumph. The shadows that had threatened to consume them were dissipating, retreating back into the darkness. "Is everyone all right?" Jarek asked, his heart racing as he scanned the faces of his comrades. He found Rhynak leaning against a tree, panting heavily, but with a relieved smile on his face. "I think we survived," Rhynak said, his voice hoarse but steady. "Though I'd prefer to never do that again." "We stood together," Lurak said, clasping Jarek's shoulder with pride. "You rallied us when it mattered most. I knew we could do it, but seeing you lead gave us the strength we needed." Jarek felt warmth spread through him at Lurak's words. "We all fought together. This victory belongs to everyone here," he replied, looking around at the tired but determined faces of his comrades. Voss approached, his expression solemn. "But at what cost? We need to assess our losses and ensure that the Zarathians don't return." Jarek nodded, the gravity of the situation settling over him like a heavy cloak. "We need to secure the perimeter and gather our wounded. If Threxus has escaped, we can't afford to let our guard down." As they moved to gather their forces, Jarek couldn't shake the feeling of dread that lingered in the back of his mind. They had won the battle, but the war against fear and darkness was far from over. In the hours that followed, the Vorians worked tirelessly to tend to their wounded and fortify their camp. The atmosphere shifted from tension to a quiet sense of accomplishment, but beneath the surface, unease remained. Jarek sat with Rhynak and Voss around a small fire, the flickering flames casting dancing shadows across their faces. "What do you think Threxus will do now?" Rhynak asked, poking at the embers with a stick. "I don't know," Jarek admitted, running a hand through his hair. "But I fear it won't be the last we see of the Zarathians. They've tasted power, and Threxus won't give up easily." Voss nodded, his brow furrowed in thought. "We need to prepare for any potential retaliation. This victory might embolden Threxus, make it more desperate." We should send scouts to follow their trail, Jarek suggested. If we can track them down, we might learn what they're planning next. Agreed, Rhynak said, determination flickering in his eyes. We have to stay ahead of them. They'll want revenge. As they spoke, the fire crackled, casting an orange glow that illuminated the deep lines of worry etched into their faces. They had survived a fierce battle, but Jarek knew that the true test lay ahead. Days passed, and the Vorians remained vigilant. Scouts were dispatched to track the Zarathians, while others worked to reinforce their defenses. The camp was filled with a sense of urgency, a shared understanding that they were not safe yet. Jarek found himself restless, pacing near the edge of the camp. He could feel the weight of responsibility pressing down on him, and the uncertainty of what lay ahead gnawed at his thoughts. "Jarek," Lorak called out, striding over with a serious expression. "We've received word from the scouts. They've tracked the Zarathians to an abandoned fortress in the foothills." Jarek's heart raced. "What are they doing there?" "They believe it's where Threxis is regrouping, likely planning its next move," Lorak replied, his voice steady. "We need to make a decision. Do we confront them there or reinforce our camp?" Jarek paused, considering their options. "If we confront them now, we might catch them off guard. But if we wait, we could be giving them time to gather strength and allies." "We can't let fear dictate our choices," Lorak said, echoing Jarek's earlier words. "We've already proven our strength together. It's time to take the fight to them." "Let's prepare," Jarek decided, feeling a surge of determination. "We'll set out at dawn." The next morning, Jarek gathered the warriors, their faces set with resolve as he addressed them. "Today, we march to the fortress. We do not do this out of fear, but out of a desire to protect our people and our future. We will show Threxis that we will not be cowed by darkness." The soldiers erupted into cheers, their spirits lifted by Jarek's words. With weapons sharpened and hearts steeled, they began the march toward the foothills. As they approached the fortress, the towering walls loomed above them, casting long shadows across the ground. The atmosphere was thick with tension, each soldier acutely aware of the impending confrontation. "Stay sharp," Jarek instructed, signaling for the group to spread out and move cautiously. "We don't know what traps they may have set." They moved through the forest, each step deliberate and quiet. The ancient fortress was shrouded in an eerie silence, its crumbling stones and overgrown vines a testament to years of neglect. As they reached the entrance, Jarek raised a hand to signal for the group to halt. "We need to scout ahead. We can't charge in blindly." Rhynak nodded, moving to the front. "I'll go first. If I see anything, I'll signal." Jarek watched as Rhynak slipped into the shadows, his form blending seamlessly with the darkness of the fortress. Time seemed to stretch as they waited, each heartbeat echoing in Jarek's ears. Minutes passed before Rhynak returned, his face pale. "There are Zarathians inside at least a dozen. They're preparing for something, but I couldn't tell what." Jarek felt a surge of determination. "Then we won't wait any longer. We'll hit them hard and fast. We can't let Threxis regroup." "On your command," Lorak said, a fierce glint in his eyes. Jarek took a deep breath, feeling the weight of leadership settle upon him once more. "For our people," he shouted, raising his sword high. "Charge!" With a battle cry that reverberated through the fortress, the Vorian soldiers surged forward, weapons drawn. They burst through the entrance, a wave of determination crashing against the startled Zarathians. The initial shock of the Vorians' assault gave Jarek the upper hand. He charged toward Threxis, who stood at the center of the chaos, its eyes blazing with fury. "Fools!" Threxis spat, shadows coiling around it like serpents. "You think you can stop the tide of darkness?" "We will not be your puppets," Jarek shouted, lunging forward. Their weapons clashed with a resonant impact, a battle of wills unfolding between them. Jarek felt the energy of his comrades around him, their determination amplifying his own. The Vorian soldiers pressed forward, pushing back against the Zarathian ranks, their unity fueling their resolve. "Don't let them push you back," Lorak shouted, rallying the troops as they fought fiercely. Jarek could see Rhynak and Voss fighting alongside him, their expressions fierce as they cut down their foes. The shadows twisted around the Zarathians, but the Vorian warriors fought back with a ferocity born from unity. Each strike was a testament to their determination to protect their home, their people, and their future. But the battle was not without its challenges. As Threxus fought, it summoned waves of darkness that clawed at Jarek's mind, whispering fears and doubts. For a moment, he felt the shadows closing in, threatening to suffocate his resolve. But then he heard the voices of his comrades, their laughter, their triumphs, the bonds they had forged. Drawing on that strength, he pushed back against the shadows, refusing to let fear take hold. "Together," Jarek shouted, rallying the Vorians. "We fight for each other." With renewed determination, they pressed forward, cutting through the darkness as they fought. Threxus roared in fury, shadows flickering dangerously around it. "No, you cannot win. The Veilstrider will rise, and you will all bow before it." But Jarek felt a spark of hope igniting within him. "Not if we stand together," he shouted, raising his sword high. With one final push, the Vorian soldiers surged forward, their collective will crashing against the Zarathians like a tidal wave. The shadows recoiled, faltering under the onslaught of their determination. Jarek locked eyes with Threxus, feeling the weight of the battle shift. "This ends now," he declared, charging forward once more. With a fierce strike, he knocked Threxus's weapon aside, sending it tumbling to the ground. The Zarathian leader stumbled back, eyes wide with shock and disbelief. "You may have won this battle, but the darkness will never truly be vanquished," Threxus spat, the shadows around it flickering as it retreated. But Jarek knew the truth. This was not just a battle against the Zarathians, but a fight against the fear that had threatened to consume them all. "We will find a way to ensure it never returns," he vowed. As Threxus retreated, the shadows began to disperse, revealing the battered but victorious Vorians standing firm amidst the remnants of the battlefield. The fortress, once a bastion of darkness, was now echoing with the cheers of the warriors who had fought so valiantly. Jarek stood at the forefront, his sword raised high, a symbol of their hard-won victory. "Today, we've shown that darkness cannot prevail against the light of unity," Jarek proclaimed, his voice ringing with fervor. "We've fought for each other, and we will continue to fight for our future." The cheers of his comrades filled the air, reverberating off the stone walls of the fortress. But beneath the surface of their triumph lay a current of unease, a reminder that the battle against fear and darkness was far from over. As the warriors began to regroup, tending to their wounded and assessing the damage, Jarek felt a heavy weight settle upon him. The victory was sweet, but the shadows of uncertainty loomed larger than ever. He wandered through the remnants of the fortress, the scent of damp stone and earth mingling with the distant sound of laughter and camaraderie. "Jarek," Lorak called, approaching with a serious expression. "We need to talk." Jarek turned to him, sensing the urgency in his friend's tone. "What's wrong?" "We can't ignore the fact that Threxus has escaped," Lorak said, glancing around to ensure they were alone. "It will regroup and seek revenge. We must prepare for that." "I know," Jarek replied, rubbing the back of his neck. "But how do we prepare for something we can't fully understand?" Rhynak joined them, his brow furrowed with concern. "I overheard some of the other warriors talking. They're scared. They saw what the shadows could do, and they're worried Threxus will return with even more power." "We need to address that fear," Jarek said, determination setting in. "We must show them that we can overcome this, that unity is our greatest strength." "Then we need to gather everyone together," Lorak suggested. "Reinforce the bonds we've forged. We can't let them doubt our cause." As the sun began to set, casting a golden hue over the remnants of the fortress, Jarek stood before the assembled warriors, the flickering light of the campfires reflecting in their eyes. He felt the weight of their expectations pressing upon him. "Today, we've faced darkness and emerged victorious," Jarek began, his voice steady. "But the battle is not over. Threxus may have fled, but it will return. We must prepare, not only our weapons but our hearts." A murmur of agreement rippled through the crowd, the warriors nodding, their expressions a mix of resolve and lingering fear. Jarek could see the doubt in some eyes, the shadows of fear that lingered like ghosts. "We are stronger together," Jarek continued, his heart swelling with determination. "Every victory we've achieved has been through our unity. We've fought for our friends, our families, and our future. We will not let fear control us." "Together," Lurak shouted from the crowd, his voice cutting through the tension. "Together," the warriors echoed, a wave of determination surging through them. Jarek felt a flicker of hope ignite within him. "Let's gather our strength. We will train, we will prepare, and when Threxus returns, we will stand ready to face it again." In the days that followed, the camp buzzed with activity. The Vorians trained relentlessly, honing their skills and reinforcing their bonds. Jarek and his comrades organized drills and exercises, focusing on unity and teamwork. They shared stories of their victories, laughing together as they remembered the bonds they had forged in battle. Yet, amidst the camaraderie, Jarek could sense an undercurrent of tension. Whispers of fear still lingered in the corners of the camp, doubts that threatened to unravel the unity they had fought so hard to build. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Jarek gathered with Lurak, Rhynak, and Voss by the fire. The flickering flames cast shadows that danced across their faces, and Jarek couldn't shake the feeling of unease that clung to him. "We need to confront the fear head-on," Jarek said, breaking the silence. "If we don't address it, it will fester. We can't let it undermine what we've built." Rhynak nodded thoughtfully. "But how? We can't just tell people not to be afraid. Fear is a powerful force." "Maybe we can share our stories," Lurak suggested. "Remind everyone of our victories, the times we've stood together against impossible odds." "I like that idea," Voss chimed in. "Stories have a way of bringing people together, showing them that they're not alone." Jarek felt a spark of inspiration. "Let's organize a gathering, a night of storytelling, where we can share our experiences and remind everyone of our strength." That night, the camp was alive with the sound of laughter and chatter as the Vorians gathered around a central fire. Jarek stood at the forefront, his heart racing with anticipation. He could see the faces of his comrades illuminated by the flames, a mix of hope and uncertainty reflecting in their eyes. "Thank you all for coming," Jarek began, his voice steady. "Tonight, we gather not just as warriors, but as friends. We've faced darkness, and while fear may linger, we have the power to overcome it together." As he spoke, Jarek felt a wave of energy wash over the crowd, their collective determination palpable. "We've fought battles, yes, but we've also shared laughter, friendship, and the bonds that make us strong. Let's remind ourselves of those moments." One by one, warriors began to share their stories, tales of bravery, of friendships forged in the heat of battle, and of the moments that had defined them as a united force. Laughter erupted as they recounted their missteps, the times they had stumbled but found their footing again with the help of their comrades. Jarek listened intently, feeling the warmth of their shared experiences wrapping around him like a comforting blanket. Each story was a thread in the tapestry of their unity, a reminder that together they could overcome anything. As the night wore on, Jarek felt the fear that had once lingered begin to dissipate, replaced by a sense of hope and determination. He realized that while the shadows of Threxus would always loom, the light they created together was far brighter. But just as the night began to settle into a rhythm of camaraderie, a sudden commotion erupted at the edge of the camp. Jarek's heart raced as he exchanged worried glances with his comrades. "What's happening?" Lurak asked, urgency creeping into his voice. "Let's find out," Jarek replied, moving toward the source of the disturbance. As they approached, they saw a group of scouts returning, their faces pale and grim. "Jarek," one of the scouts called, breathless, "we've spotted Zarathians in the nearby valley. They're gathering forces. Threxus is rallying them." The atmosphere shifted instantly. The laughter and warmth of the storytelling night evaporated, replaced by a chilling sense of urgency. Jarek felt the weight of responsibility pressing down on him once more. "We need to prepare," Jarek shouted, rallying the Vorians. "Gather your weapons and armor. We're going to meet this threat head-on." The warriors responded with fierce determination, scrambling to gather their gear and fortify their defenses. Jarek felt a surge of adrenaline as he moved through the camp, ensuring everyone was ready for the impending confrontation. "Rhynak, Lorak, Voss, let's gather our best strategists," Jarek said, his mind racing. "We need to plan our approach." As they convened, the tension in the air was palpable. Jarek stood at the center, outlining their options. "Threxis will be expecting us to attack directly, but we can use that to our advantage. We need to create distractions, draw them away from their main forces." "What if we set up a feint?" Rhynak suggested. "We can send a small group to draw their attention while the rest of us flank them." "Exactly," Jarek agreed. "If we can separate Threxis from its forces, we stand a better chance of taking them down one by one." As the plan took shape, Jarek felt a flicker of hope ignite within him. They had faced darkness before, and they had emerged victorious. This time would be no different. The next day, the Vorians moved with purpose, their spirits ignited by the impending confrontation. Jarek felt the weight of their determination as they approached the valley where Threxis and its forces had gathered. "Stay sharp," Jarek instructed, his heart pounding in rhythm with their footsteps. "We're counting on each other. Remember our plan and trust in one another." As they reached the edge of the valley, Jarek signaled for the group to halt. He could see Zorathians milling about, unaware of the approaching storm. "Rhynak, Lorak, Voss, get into position for the feint," Jarek whispered. "The rest of you, follow my lead. We strike when the moment is right." With a nod, they moved into position, the tension hanging thick in the air. Jarek could feel his heart racing. The sun hung low in the sky, casting long shadows across the valley as Jarek and his comrades prepared for the confrontation ahead. The air was thick with tension, each warrior acutely aware of the stakes. Jarek's pulse quickened as he scanned the gathering of Zorathians below, their dark forms a stark reminder of the threat they posed. "Remember our objective," Jarek murmured to himself, gripping his sword tightly. "Separate Threxis from its forces. We can't let fear dictate our actions." As he watched the Zorathians, Jarek felt a mix of dread and resolve. He could see Threxis at the center, its presence commanding and dark, surrounded by a throng of warriors. They appeared restless, the air around them crackling with tension. "Are we ready?" Rhynak asked, emerging from the shadows beside him, his voice low but steady. "Ready as we'll ever be," Jarek replied, glancing at the other members of their unit. Lorak and Voss were in position, their expressions a mixture of focus and determination. Jarek raised his hand, signaling for the group to spread out. "Remember the plan. Rhynak, Lorak, Voss, move when I give the signal. The rest of you, stay alert." With a collective nod, the warriors took their positions, hearts pounding in unison. Jarek's mind raced as he thought of the stories shared around the fire, the laughter and warmth they had fostered. They were stronger together, and he would fight to protect that bond. The feint began with a sudden rustle in the bushes to the left of the Zorathian camp. Rhynak, Lorak, and Voss burst from their hiding place, their battle cries shattering the tense silence. The Zorathians turned in confusion, weapons drawn, eyes narrowed with suspicion. "Now!" Jarek shouted, leaping forward, sword raised high. He charged down the slope, adrenaline surging through him. The rest of the Vorian warriors followed closely behind, moving as one cohesive unit, driven by the urgency of the moment. As they descended into the valley, chaos erupted. The Zorathians reacted instinctively, scrambling to respond to the unexpected attack. Jarek felt a rush of exhilaration as he plunged into the fray, his sword meeting the weapons of the Zorathians with a resounding clash. "Together," he bellowed, urging his comrades onward. The Vorians fought with a ferocity that surprised even themselves, each blow driven by the memories of their shared struggles. Jarek darted through the throng, cutting down enemies with practiced ease. His heart raced as he fought, each movement a dance between life and death. but he remained focused, remembering their objective to draw Threxus out of the fray. "Lurak!" Jarek shouted, spotting his friend battling a group of Zarathians. "We need to lure Threxus away. Keep pushing forward." Lurak nodded, a fierce determination in his eyes. "On it, Rhynak, with me." Jarek watched as they fought their way deeper into the heart of the chaos, drawing the attention of Threxus and its guards. He could sense the Dark Leader's frustration as it surveyed the battlefield, its eyes narrowed with fury. "Enough of this," Threxus roared, its voice echoing like thunder. Shadows writhed around it, pulsating with dark energy. "You think you can disrupt my plans?" Jarek felt a chill run down his spine, but pressed on, slicing through the ranks of the Zarathians as he moved toward Threxus. "We'll stop you," he shouted, forcing his way through the chaos. As the battle raged, Jarek fought with every ounce of strength he possessed. The air was thick with the clash of steel and the cries of warriors, both Vorian and Zarathian. He felt the energy of his comrades around him, their shared resolve propelling him forward. But Threxus was formidable. The shadows around it seemed to pulse with life, coiling and twisting, as if they were sentient. The darkness felt suffocating, clawing at Jarek's mind, whispering doubts and fears. "Focus," he muttered to himself, shaking off the intrusive thoughts. He pressed on, pushing toward the heart of the battle, toward Threxus. Just as he was about to reach the Dark Leader, a group of Zarathians surged forward, blocking his path. Jarek gritted his teeth, his heart pounding as he fought them back, striking with precision and speed. He could see Lurak and Rhynak holding their own nearby, but the Zarathians were numerous, and the battle was far from over. "Keep pushing," Lurak shouted, his voice cutting through the din of battle. "We're almost there." "Don't give up," Rhynak added, his sword flashing as he fended off an attacking Zarathian. With renewed determination, Jarek pressed on, cutting through the ranks. He felt the weight of his comrades' faith in him fueling his resolve. They had come too far to falter now. Suddenly, a piercing scream rang out, and Jarek turned just in time to see one of his warriors fall to the ground, clutching a wound. The sight ignited a fire within him. "We fight for each other," he roared, charging ahead with newfound vigor. As Jarek pushed through the chaos, he caught sight of Threxus again, its presence an imposing shadow among the chaos. The Dark Leader was drawing power from the shadows, its eyes glowing with an unholy light. "You cannot stop what you do not understand," Threxus bellowed, its voice resonating with a deep, dark energy. "You are nothing but sparks against the storm." "No," Jarek shouted back, his voice steady. "We are more than sparks. We are a flame." With that, he surged forward, dodging the Zarathians that tried to block his path. He felt his sword become an extension of his will, a beacon of light cutting through the darkness. The shadows around Threxus recoiled as he drew closer. "Your power is weak," Jarek taunted, his heart racing. "You underestimate us." Threxus's eyes narrowed, fury etched across its features. "You will regret this insolence." As Jarek neared, he could feel the energy of the shadows coiling around Threxus like a storm. But he pressed on, the determination of his comrades propelling him forward. With a final leap, he closed the distance between them, raising his sword high. "Now," Jarek shouted, bringing his blade down with all his might. The impact resonated through the air, and Jarek felt a shockwave of energy pulse from the collision. Threxus staggered back, the shadows flickering around it, revealing the vulnerability hidden within its dark power. As the battle continued to rage, Jarek felt a renewed sense of hope. He had drawn Threxus's attention, but it would take more than one strike to bring the Dark Leader down. He could see Lurak and Rhynak fighting their way toward him, their faces determined. "Together," Lurak shouted as they reached his side, "we have to strike as one." Jarek nodded, heart racing with the energy of the moment. "Let's show Threxus the strength of our unity." With a shared battle cry, the three of them charged toward Threxus, their swords gleaming in the dim light. The shadows writhed around the Dark Leader, but the bond they shared felt like a shield against the darkness. Threxus snarled, the shadows coiling protectively around it. You think you can defeat me? You are merely delaying the inevitable. But Jarek could feel the strength of his comrades beside him, their unwavering resolve lighting the way. We won't let you win, he shouted, his voice ringing with conviction. With a coordinated effort, Jarek, Lurak, and Rhynak struck as one, their swords cutting through the shadows. The darkness writhed and flickered as their blades connected, and Jarek felt a surge of energy pulsing through them. Now, strike true, Lurak called, pushing forward. Together, they launched their final assault, the energy of their unity coalescing into a brilliant light that surged against Threxus. The shadows recoiled, and Jarek felt a rush of exhilaration as the darkness began to fade. Threxus's eyes widened in disbelief. No, this cannot be. But it was too late. The combined strength of the Vorians shattered the Dark Leader's defenses, and with one final strike, they drove their swords into the heart of the darkness. A blinding light erupted from the impact, and Jarek squeezed his eyes shut against the brilliance. The air crackled with energy as the shadows screamed, twisting and dissipating into nothingness. Jarek felt a rush of warmth enveloping him, the light banishing the darkness that had threatened to consume them. As the light faded, Jarek opened his eyes cautiously, taking in the scene around him. The battlefield was transformed. The Zorathians, once a force of terror, were now in disarray, their dark leader defeated. The remaining warriors fled, scattering into the shadows of the valley. Jarek turned to Lurak and Rhynak, their expressions a mixture of disbelief and triumph. We did it, Jarek breathed, awe filling his voice. We really did, Rhynak. The aftermath of the battle hung in the air, charged with a mix of relief and disbelief. The Vorians stood in stunned silence, absorbing the reality of their victory over Threxus. Jarek looked around the valley, taking in the sight of fallen Zorathians, the echoes of their cries still lingering in the air. He could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on him, both exhilarating and exhausting. Is it really over? Lurak asked, his voice barely above a whisper. He scanned the horizon, eyes wide, as if expecting shadows to spring forth at any moment. Jarek took a deep breath, trying to quell the uncertainty that gnawed at him. For now, yes, but we must remain vigilant. Darkness has a way of returning when least expected. Rhynak nodded, his brow furrowed with thought. We should check for survivors, see if anyone needs our help. The Zorathians may have retreated, but they could regroup. Agreed, Jarek said, shaking off the lingering weariness. Let's gather the others. We can't lose sight of our duty. As they moved through the remnants of the battlefield, Jarek felt a sense of pride swell within him. They had fought valiantly, uniting against a common threat. The bonds they had forged in the heat of battle were unbreakable. The Vorians quickly organized themselves, forming search parties to assess the situation. Jarek led a small group toward the perimeter of the valley, scanning for any signs of life. The air was thick with the scent of earth and sweat, remnants of the struggle that had just unfolded. Over here, one of the warriors called, gesturing toward a cluster of trees where a few Zorathians lay wounded but alive. Jarek felt a surge of compassion. Even in victory, they had a responsibility to those who were injured. Let's secure them, Jarek instructed. We can't let our emotions cloud our judgment. They're still a threat. As they approached, the Zorathians raised their weapons, but Jarek held up his hands. We mean you no harm, he said, his voice firm yet calm. We're here to help. One of the wounded Zorathians, a woman with dirt-streaked skin and weary eyes, lowered her weapon slightly. You defeated Threxus, she stammered, disbelief etched on her face. Why would you help us? Because we believe in something greater than hatred, Jarek replied, his voice steady. We fought for our lives, but we also fought for a future where darkness doesn't reign. If you wish for peace, we will help you. The woman looked at her companions, who were equally wary but showed signs of hope. We have no home left. Threxus was our leader, and now we are lost. Jarek felt a pang of empathy for them. Then come with us. We can find a way forward together. There's strength in numbers, and we have faced darkness before. We can face it again, but only if we unite. As they helped the Zarathians to their feet, Jarek felt the weight of their actions settle in. They were extending a hand when others would draw a sword, showing that compassion was just as powerful as might. He could see the hesitation in the eyes of his comrades, but the trust that had formed among the Vorians encouraged them to move forward. The journey back to the camp was tense, the air heavy with uncertainty. Jarek walked beside the Zarathians, exchanging glances that held unspoken questions. He could sense the fear still simmering beneath the surface, both from his comrades and the former enemies. "What will the others think?" Lurak asked quietly, falling into step beside Jarek. "We're bringing the enemy to our home." "We're not bringing enemies," Jarek replied. "We're giving them a chance to be allies. If we let fear dictate our actions, we'll never escape the cycle of hatred." Lurak nodded, though uncertainty still flickered in his eyes. "I hope you're right." As they entered the Vorian camp, Jarek felt a mix of apprehension and determination. The warriors were still busy tending to their wounds and rebuilding after the battle. They looked up as the group approached, eyes widening at the sight of the Zarathians. "What is this?" one of the warriors barked, hand instinctively reaching for his weapon. "Stand down," Jarek shouted, raising his hands to calm the rising tension. "These Zarathians are not our enemies. They are survivors of Threxus's reign, just as we are. They seek peace." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Confusion and anger warred with curiosity. Jarek felt the weight of their collective gaze, and he stepped forward, the burden of leadership pressing heavily on his shoulders. "Listen," he called out, raising his voice to be heard above the murmurs. "We've just faced one of our greatest threats. We fought bravely, united against the darkness that sought to consume us. If we can extend our hands in friendship, we might find that we're stronger together than apart." The Zarathians, now close enough to hear, stepped forward cautiously, their expressions a mixture of fear and hope. The woman who had spoken before looked at Jarek, her eyes searching. "We come to you in peace, but we need your guidance. We are lost." At that, one of the Vorians stepped forward, skepticism etched across his face. "And how can we trust you? You fought against us." "We all fought against a common enemy," Jarek interjected, stepping between the two groups. "Threxus used fear to divide us. If we allow that fear to continue, we'll only find ourselves in another cycle of violence. Let us learn from the past instead." Silence fell over the camp as the warriors contemplated his words. Jarek could feel the tension hanging in the air, a fragile truce teetering on the edge. Finally, an older Vorian stepped forward, his gaze steady. "If we are to accept these former foes, we must do so carefully. They are the remnants of a dark past, and trust is earned, not given." "Agreed," Jarek replied, feeling the weight of the decision resting on him. "But we can't let fear dictate our future. We can learn from each other, grow stronger, and face whatever comes together." The murmurs of dissent began to fade, replaced by a cautious curiosity. Slowly, a few warriors lowered their weapons, exchanging glances that suggested a willingness to listen. "Very well," the older Vorian said, his voice resonant. "We will give them a chance. But know this, if they betray our trust, we will not hesitate to defend our home." The Zarathians nodded in understanding, a sense of gratitude mingling with their fear. "We won't let you down," the woman said, her voice steady. "We want to build a future free of darkness." Jarek felt a wave of relief wash over him. The first step had been taken, but it was only the beginning. He needed to reinforce this fragile alliance, to show both sides that unity was their greatest weapon against the encroaching darkness. As the sun set on the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple, the Vorian camp bustled with activity. The atmosphere shifted as they began to incorporate the Zarathians into their ranks. There was still skepticism, but conversations were starting to form, tentative bonds beginning to emerge. Jarek found himself in a corner of the camp, talking with Lurak and Rhynak, their expressions still uncertain. "What now?" Lurak asked, crossing his arms. "We've won a battle, but what about the war?" "We need to train together," Rhynak suggested. "If we are to stand as allies, We must understand each other's strengths and weaknesses. Agreed, Jarek replied, nodding. Let's start by sharing our knowledge, combat techniques, survival skills, strategies. We must ensure everyone knows that we are one force, united against the darkness. What about Threxus? Lurak asked, his brow furrowed. You think it's really gone for good? No, Jarek said, his expression darkening. Threxus was a creature born of darkness, and darkness never truly dies. It shifts, it hides, and it waits. We must be ready for when it returns. Then we need to fortify our defenses, Rhynak added. Training and preparation must be our top priorities. That night, the camp was alive with a sense of purpose. Jarek organized the warriors, setting up training exercises where Vorian and Zarathian warriors could learn from each other. The sounds of clashing weapons and laughter filled the air as they practiced, slowly breaking down the barriers that had once divided them. Jarek watched as Lurak demonstrated a combat technique, guiding a group of both Vorian and Zarathian fighters. He felt a swell of pride as he observed the camaraderie beginning to blossom. See? We can work together, Jarek murmured to Rhynak, who stood beside him, arms crossed. This is just the beginning. Rhynak nodded, though his brow remained furrowed. But it won't be easy. There are still those who harbor resentment, who can't let go of the past. Then it's our responsibility to guide them, Jarek replied, determination hardening in. The days following the battle transformed the Vorian camp into a hive of activity. Morning sun filtered through the trees, illuminating a scene of hard work and collaboration. Jarek watched as Vorian and Zarathian warriors trained together, their movements gradually synchronizing, trust growing with every clash of practice swords. Look at them, Lurak said, nodding toward a pair of fighters sparring nearby. One was a Vorian, tall and muscular, while the other, a Zarathian, was smaller but quick and agile. They're starting to blend their styles. It's incredible. It is, Jarek agreed, his heart swelling with hope. This is what we fought for, not just to defeat Threxus, but to build something better. As the sun climbed higher, Jarek called for a break, gathering the warriors around a makeshift training area. He stood at the center, feeling the weight of his leadership pressing down on him. You've all trained hard, he began, his voice steady. But remember, this isn't just about combat skills. It's about understanding each other, respecting one another's strengths and weaknesses. Only then can we truly become allies. The group nodded, but Jarek could still sense an undercurrent of doubt among some of the Zarathians. He knew that old prejudices wouldn't vanish overnight. Trust was a fragile thing, easily shattered. Let's share stories, Jarek continued, eager to foster a sense of community. Our histories, our cultures, let's learn from one another. A murmur of agreement spread through the crowd. Jarek felt a flicker of excitement at the idea of bridging gaps through storytelling, revealing their shared humanity. As the sun began to set, casting a golden hue across the camp, warriors gathered around a fire. The warmth of the flames drew them closer, easing the tension that had lingered since the battle. Jarek settled beside Lurak and Rhynak, ready to listen as stories began to unfold. An elder Vorian warrior named Darius spoke first, his voice rich with experience. Long ago, we faced a great drought that threatened our survival. It was a time of despair, but it was also a time that brought us together. We learned to share resources, to support one another. In the end, it was our unity that allowed us to endure. The Zarathians listened intently, their expressions shifting from skepticism to curiosity. Then a young Zarathian woman named Elise spoke up. Our stories aren't so different, she began, her voice hesitant but gaining strength. In our villages, we valued loyalty above all. When Threxus rose to power, it twisted that loyalty into fear. I lost my brother in the chaos. He stood against Threxus, believing in freedom. The fire crackled as silence enveloped the group, the weight of shared grief hanging in the air. Jarek felt a sense of kinship forming, a thread connecting them all, woven through loss and hope. Your brother was brave, Jarek said softly. We honor those who fought against darkness, no matter the side. Elise met his gaze, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "Thank you. We all want to believe there can be something better." One by one, warriors shared their stories, revealing the pain and resilience that lay beneath the surface. The fire's glow illuminated their faces, transforming doubt into understanding. Laughter mingled with tears as they bonded over their shared experiences. As the night deepened, Jarek felt a profound sense of connection growing among the group. Yet, he also sensed the looming shadow of Threxus, the potential for conflict still simmering beneath the surface. He glanced at Rhynak, who seemed lost in thought. "What's on your mind?" Jarek asked quietly. "I worry about the others," Rhynak replied, gesturing toward a group of warriors who had withdrawn to the edge of the firelight. "They still resent the Zarathians. They're not ready to forgive or forget." "They will," Jarek insisted, though doubt crept into his voice. "We just need to keep fostering this unity. If they can see the Zarathians as people, not monsters, we have a chance." Rhynak nodded, but remained unconvinced. "What if Threxus returns? What if this unity isn't enough?" "Then we'll fight again," Jarek replied, a fierce determination igniting within him. "But we won't fight alone. We'll stand together." As the days passed, Jarek worked tirelessly to bridge the divide between the two factions. He organized joint training sessions, ensuring that Vorian and Zarathian warriors learned from one another. Slowly, the walls of distrust began to crumble, replaced by a fragile but growing bond. One afternoon, while overseeing a training exercise, Jarek noticed Lorak and Ely sparring. They exchanged tips, their movements becoming more fluid as they adapted to each other's styles. Jarek felt a rush of pride at the sight. "See," he said to Rhynak, who was watching from the sidelines. "It's working. They're learning to trust each other." "Maybe," Rhynak replied, but his tone was cautious. "But what happens when real danger comes? Will that trust hold?" "Trust is forged in adversity," Jarek said, his gaze fixed on Lorak and Ely's. "The more they fight alongside one another, the stronger their bond will become." As if on cue, a sudden rustling came from the tree line. Jarek's instincts flared, and he turned sharply, scanning the perimeter. "What was that?" Rhynak shifted, his expression tense. "Could be a scout. We should check it out." Jarek led the way toward the sound, heart pounding with apprehension. The other warriors fell into formation, their eyes alert. As they reached the edge of the camp, they spotted a figure emerging from the trees, a lone Zarathian, face smeared with dirt, eyes wide with panic. "Help, please," the newcomer shouted, stumbling forward. "Threxus, it's back." Jarek felt a cold shiver run down his spine. "What do you mean? How is that possible?" "It was just a rumor at first," the Zarathian gasped, breathless. "But I saw it. Threxus is gathering its forces again, recruiting those who have fled. It plans to strike." The warriors exchanged anxious glances, the atmosphere thickening with tension. "Gather the others," Jarek commanded, his voice steady despite the fear gnawing at him. "We need to prepare." As the warriors regrouped, Jarek's mind raced. This wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about protecting the fragile unity they had built. If Threxus returned, it could shatter everything they had worked for. "Listen up," Jarek shouted, addressing the assembled warriors. "We have received word that Threxus is regrouping. We can't let it take us by surprise. We need to fortify our defenses, train harder, and prepare for a possible assault." "What about the Zarathians?" one Vorian warrior asked, skepticism etched on his face. "Can we trust them to fight alongside us?" "They've fought against Threxus as well," Jarek replied, his voice firm. "If they are willing to stand with us, we will not turn our backs on them now. Unity is our greatest strength." As the camp buzzed with preparation, Jarek sought out Elise, who was overseeing a group of Zarathian warriors. She looked up as he approached, determination radiating from her. "We've heard the news," Elise said, her expression resolute. "We want to help. We won't let Threxus take our home again." "Good," Jarek replied, grateful for her strength. "We need every able fighter. If we can't face it together, will fall apart. Elise nodded, a fierce light in her eyes. We won't let fear control us. This time, we fight for our freedom. As they rallied the troops, Jarek felt a sense of purpose solidifying within him. The fear that had once gripped him was replaced by a fierce determination to protect what they had built together. They would stand united against the encroaching darkness, refusing to be torn apart by old wounds. As the days turned into a blur of training and preparation, Jarek felt the weight of leadership pressing heavily on his shoulders. He convened meetings with both Vorian and Zarathian leaders, strategizing their defense and rallying their spirits. They shared plans, expectations, and hopes, forging a collective resolve. The air was thick with anticipation when Jarek called for a final gathering, the night before the expected confrontation. The camp buzzed with a mixture of anxiety and determination, warriors sharing whispered conversations and glances filled with purpose. Tomorrow, we face the darkness together, Jarek began, his voice steady as he stood before the assembled warriors. What we've built here, this unity, will be our greatest weapon. Remember the stories we shared, the connections we've forged. It is time to show Threxus the strength of our alliance. The crowd erupted in cheers, the sound reverberating through the camp. Jarek felt a surge of energy, a collective resolve that lifted his spirits. Let's rest and prepare. Tomorrow, we fight not just for survival, but for a future where we can live side by side, free from the shadows of the past. As the warriors dispersed to their quarters, dawn broke over the Vorian camp, casting long shadows across the ground. Jarek awoke to the sound of rustling, the scent of smoke lingering in the air as warriors prepared for the day ahead. The anticipation was palpable. A storm was brewing, both in the skies and in the hearts of those ready to face Threxus once more. After a quick breakfast, Jarek called for a gathering. The warriors assembled, eyes filled with determination, but also anxiety. Jarek could sense the weight of what lay ahead pressing down on everyone. Today is the day we stand united, he began, his voice firm and resolute. We've trained hard, forged new alliances, and built trust. Now, we must fight together as one. A collective murmur of agreement spread through the crowd. Lorak stood at Jarek's side, gripping his weapon tightly, while Rhynak paced nearby, his expression a mix of worry and readiness. Remember what we've shared, Jarek continued. The stories, the sacrifices. We fight for our families, our homes, and the future we've envisioned together. Fear will not guide us today, courage will. As the warriors responded with shouts of affirmation, Jarek felt a surge of hope wash over him. They were ready. He could see it in their eyes, the flicker of resolve, the determination to fight for something greater than themselves. After the gathering, Jarek moved through the camp, checking on the preparations. The sounds of sharpening weapons and the smell of smoke from the cooking fires filled the air. He saw Zarathians and Vorians working side by side, reinforcing barricades and strategizing. Jarek, Elise called, waving him over. She was with a group of Zarathian warriors, their faces set with determination. We've devised a plan for flanking maneuvers. If Threxus comes from the east, we can use the terrain to our advantage. Good thinking, Jarek replied, impressed by her leadership. We need to ensure we can move quickly if we're overwhelmed. Can your warriors keep pace? Elise nodded confidently. We've trained hard. We'll be ready. As they continued discussing strategies, Jarek noticed a shadow creeping over the camp. The sun was hidden behind dark clouds, a portent of the storm to come. It matched the weight of anxiety gathering in his chest. Hours later, as the camp settled into a tense quiet, a horn sounded in the distance. Jarek's heart raced. It's time, he said, voice steady but urgent. He gathered the warriors again, adrenaline surging through him. To your positions, remember your training and stay focused. We fight as one. They moved with precision, warriors forming into lines, Vorians and Zarathians standing side by side. The anticipation crackled in the air, electric with the promise of conflict. Jarek could see the determination in their eyes, but also the flicker of fear, a reminder of the risks they were taking. As the first shadows of Threxus's forces appeared on the horizon, a hush fell over the camp. Jarek took a deep breath, steadying himself. The army approaching was a mass of dark figures, a testament to the threat they had faced before. "Hold your positions," Jarek commanded, his voice ringing out. "Stay strong." The ground trembled as Threxus's army marched forward, a blend of Zarathians who had been twisted into dark creatures and other nightmarish entities. Jarek's heart sank, but he couldn't afford to show weakness. "Focus on the plan," he reminded himself as he scanned the ranks, looking for any sign of Threxus. "We can do this." The enemy closed in, and with a sudden roar, the battle began. Jarek's heart raced as he charged forward. Leading the charge, he could hear the clash of metal and the cries of his warriors behind him. As he engaged with the nearest enemy, a twisted Zarathian with eyes burning like embers, Jarek felt the adrenaline surge through him. Each blow was fueled by the determination of their united front. Beside him, Lurak fought valiantly, his weapon slicing through the chaos. "Stay together," he shouted, cutting down an enemy that threatened to break their lines. Elise fought just a few feet away, her movements precise and graceful. Jarek felt a swell of pride as she executed a perfectly timed maneuver, taking down an enemy that had been targeting one of the Vorian warriors. "Good job," he called out, determination mingling with admiration. As the battle raged, Jarek caught a glimpse of Threxus, dark and imposing, standing at the rear of the enemy ranks, orchestrating the chaos. The creature's presence sent a chill down Jarek's spine. It was not just a leader, it was a symbol of everything they had fought against. "Rhynak," Jarek shouted, trying to make his way toward his friend. "We have to cut through to Threxus." Rhynak nodded, his expression fierce. "Let's go." Together, they fought through the fray, weaving between warriors on both sides. Jarek could feel the unity of their forces as Vorian and Zarathian warriors fought side by side, covering one another, taking down enemies with a shared purpose. As they neared Threxus, the creature turned its gaze toward them, a malevolent grin spreading across its face. "You think you can defeat me?" it taunted, voice echoing across the battlefield. "You're nothing but remnants of a lost cause." Jarek's heart raced at the sight. "We will not be afraid," he shouted back, raising his weapon high. "We fight for each other." With a battle cry, they surged forward, but Threxus's forces were vast. The creature raised its hands, summoning dark energy that rippled through the air, pushing back against Jarek and Rhynak. "Keep pushing," Rhynak yelled, determination etched on his face. "We can't let it break our lines." They charged, and as they clashed with Threxus's guards, Jarek felt the tide of battle shifting. The energy around them felt charged, as if the very earth was responding to their united strength. Elise joined them, her eyes blazing with defiance. "Together," she shouted, lunging forward. "We can't give in." Jarek could feel the surge of power emanating from their collective will. They fought as a cohesive force, each blow and each maneuver reflecting the bond they had built through struggle and understanding. But as they neared Threxus, the creature unleashed another wave of dark energy. It struck like a shockwave, pushing them back and sending several warriors sprawling. Jarek fought to maintain his footing, but the blast had scattered their forces. "Rhynak," he shouted, searching for his friend amidst the chaos. "I'm here," Rhynak called back, rising to his feet, but a group of twisted Zarathians was closing in on him. "Watch out," Jarek yelled, rushing forward to defend him. In the chaos, time seemed to stretch. Jarek felt the weight of every decision, every sacrifice that had led them here. He pushed forward, slicing through the enemies with renewed vigor. They were not just fighting for survival, they were fighting for the future they had dreamed of. As they battled through the throng, Jarek caught sight of Threxus again, now looming closer, its dark energy swirling ominously. He knew they had to confront it, to break its hold over the battlefield. "We need to reach Threxus," Jarek yelled, rallying the warriors around him. "We can't let it gain any more ground." With a renewed sense of urgency, they charged together, flanking the creature. As they moved in, Jarek could see the fear in the eyes of some of the Zarathian warriors. They were fighting against a past that had haunted them, but they had to trust in their new alliance. Jarek found himself facing Threxus at last, a surge of defiance swelling within him. "You will not take our future," he declared, raising his weapon. Threxus laughed, a chilling sound that echoed across the battlefield. "You think you can defeat me? I am darkness incarnate." With a roar, Jarek charged, Rhynak and Elise at his side. They struck at Threxus together, their weapons colliding with dark energy. Threxus retaliated, dark tendrils reaching out, but they fought as one, weaving in and out of danger. Jarek felt the strength of his allies around him, a powerful force driving him forward. "Now," Rhynak shouted, their movements synchronized. "We can end this." In a final surge, they struck together, their combined strength forming a barrier against Threxus's darkness. The impact sent shockwaves through the air, a burst of light radiating from their weapons. Threxus screeched, its form flickering as if reality itself was struggling to contain it. "No, this cannot be." In that moment, Jarek felt an overwhelming rush of energy, the power of unity surging through him. He could see the combined resolve of every warrior standing with him, and it ignited something deep within. "Together," he shouted, urging his allies on. "For our future." With one final, coordinated strike, they unleashed a wave of energy that crashed against Threxus, shattering the darkness that had held sway for so long. As the blinding light engulfed Threxus, a deafening roar filled the air. The creature writhed in agony, its form dissolving into shadows that dissipated like smoke. The battlefield fell silent, every warrior holding their breath as the reality of their victory began to sink in. Jarek stood at the forefront, heart pounding, staring into the swirling remnants of Threxus's dark energy. His body tingled with the adrenaline of battle, and he felt a rush of relief wash over him. They had done it. Together, they had faced the embodiment of their fears and triumphed. Around him, the warriors slowly lowered their weapons, disbelief etched on their faces. Then, as if a dam had burst, cheers erupted from the ranks. Vorian and Zarathian warriors embraced, laughter and shouts echoing across the battlefield. "Is it truly over?" Elise asked, her voice a mixture of hope and trepidation as she approached Jarek. "I think so," he replied, still catching his breath. "But we need to be cautious. We don't know what remnants might linger." As the last echoes of battle faded, Jarek scanned the horizon, noting the dark clouds that had hung above them were beginning to disperse. Sunlight broke through, casting a warm glow over the land. It felt like a sign, a promise of a new beginning. The gathering that followed was one of mixed emotions. They had faced down their darkest fears and emerged victorious, yet the scars of the battle remained fresh. Jarek and the leaders of both factions stood together, surveying the warriors who had fought so bravely. "We need to tend to the wounded and honor those we've lost," Jarek said, turning to Lurak and Elise. "We owe them that." Lurak nodded, a somber expression on his face. "There were many sacrifices today. We should gather to remember them and ensure their bravery is never forgotten." As they began to organize the warriors, Jarek felt the weight of leadership press down on him once more. He had brought them together to fight, but now he had to guide them through the aftermath of battle and into a hopeful future. In the days that followed, the camp buzzed with activity as they rebuilt and healed. The wounded were tended to, and rituals of remembrance were held for those who had fallen. Jarek participated in every ceremony, feeling the heaviness of loss, but also the spark of unity growing stronger. Elise had taken on a leadership role among the Zarathians, organizing efforts to help rebuild their damaged homes. She had become a symbol of hope, her fierce spirit inspiring others to come together in the face of adversity. "Jarek, come look at this," she called one afternoon, motioning for him to join her at the edge of the camp. As he approached, he saw a group of warriors constructing a memorial for those they had lost. It was a simple structure, made of stone and wood, adorned with symbols from both cultures. "It's beautiful," Jarek said, taken aback by the craftsmanship. "It's a reminder of what we've overcome," Elise explained, "and a pledge to honor those who fought for our future." Jarek felt a swell of pride as he watched the warriors work together, their laughter mingling with solemnity. They were creating something that represented not only their past, but also the foundation for their future, a shared commitment to stand together against whatever challenges lay ahead. As the memorial took shape, Jarek took time to meet with the leaders of both factions. They gathered in a circle, seated on logs around a fire. "We need to discuss what comes next," Lurak said, his expression serious. "Threxus may be defeated, but there are still remnants of its forces scattered throughout the land. We can't let our guard down." Elise nodded. "We should send scouts to assess the situation. We need to be proactive in ensuring our safety and stability." Jarek leaned forward, the firelight reflecting in his eyes. "We can't just focus on the threats. We need to foster the bonds we've formed here. If we're to move forward, we must continue to build trust and understanding between our people." "Agreed," Lurak said. "But we also have a duty to protect our homes. We need to balance our focus on unity with the reality of the dangers still lurking." "Then let's create a dual plan," Elise proposed. "We can establish patrols to ensure our safety while also organizing community gatherings to strengthen our ties." Jarek felt a spark of inspiration. "Yes, we can hold joint training sessions, allowing us to practice together and bond as a united front. And we can share our stories, continue to learn from each other." The leaders exchanged nods, the firelight illuminating their determination. They were united in purpose, committed to forging a path forward together. As they implemented their plans, Jarek felt the atmosphere in the camp shifting. The tension that had lingered post-battle began to dissolve, replaced by a sense of camaraderie and hope. Warriors trained together, and gatherings turned into celebrations of their shared victories. One evening, under a sky full of stars, Jarek stood before a group of warriors gathered for a communal feast. Laughter and chatter filled the air, and the scent of roasted meat wafted through the campsite. "Tonight, we celebrate our victories and honor our losses," he began, his voice carrying over the crowd. "But more importantly, we celebrate our unity. We are no longer divided by fear or prejudice. We stand together, stronger than ever." Cheers erupted from the crowd, echoing through the night. Elise stepped forward, a grin spreading across her face. "Let's share our stories again, remind ourselves of where we've come from and the strength we've found in one another." As the night unfolded, warriors took turns sharing tales of bravery, laughter mingling with poignant memories. Jarek felt a warmth in his heart, the bonds they were forging deepening with every story told. However, even amidst the joy, Jarek couldn't shake the feeling of unease that lingered at the back of his mind. Threxus may have been defeated, but the darkness it had spread still loomed. He sensed that challenges were not yet behind them. One night, as he gazed at the stars, Rhynak approached him, a thoughtful expression on his face. "You've done well, Jarek. I can see the changes in our people, how they've come together." "Thank you, Rhynak," Jarek replied, his voice soft. "But I can't shake the feeling that something is still out there, waiting for the right moment to strike." Rhynak nodded, eyes focused on the horizon. "I've felt it too. We need to remain vigilant, keep our eyes open for any signs of trouble." They stood together in silence, the weight of their shared concerns settling between them. "Let's not lose sight of what we've built," Jarek said finally. "We can't let fear dictate our actions. We need to keep moving forward, to strengthen our ties and prepare for whatever challenges may come." Rhynak turned to him, a flicker of resolve in his eyes. "You're right. Together, we can face anything." As the weeks passed, Jarek and Rhynak took turns leading patrols to scout the surrounding areas. They traveled through the forests, checking for signs of the remnants of Threxus's forces. While they found evidence of small skirmishes, there was no sign of a significant threat. However, during one patrol, Jarek stumbled upon something unexpected. As he and Rhynak trekked through a narrow path, they heard a rustling in the bushes. "Stay alert," Rhynak warned, gripping his weapon tightly. Jarek moved cautiously, heart racing as he approached the source of the noise. Suddenly, a small figure darted from the underbrush, a young Zarathian child, dirty and disheveled, with fear etched on her face. "Help, please," she cried, tears streaming down her cheeks. Jarek knelt down, his heart aching at the sight of her distress. "It's okay, you're safe now. What happened?" "They took my parents," the child sobbed. "They said they were going to make them serve Threxus again." Rhynak exchanged a worried glance with Jarek, understanding dawning in his eyes. "We need to get her back to camp. We can't let fear take hold again." "Stay close to us," Jarek instructed the child gently, leading her through the underbrush. "We'll protect you." As they made their way back, Jarek's mind raced. If Threxus's forces were still recruiting and terrorizing, they needed to act quickly. The fragile unity they had built could shatter if fear took hold once more. Once they returned to the camp, Jarek wasted no time in gathering the leaders. Elis, Lorak, and others assembled quickly, concern etched on their faces as he recounted the encounter. "We can't allow Threxus's influence to linger," Jarek said urgently. "We have to launch a search party to find the child's parents and anyone else who may be in danger. We need to show our people that we are united against this threat." Lorak nodded, his expression serious. "We can't allow fear to fester. It's crucial that we demonstrate our strength and commitment to each other." Elis stepped forward, her voice resolute. "I'll lead the search party. We'll find those who are missing and reassure our people." Elis stood before the assembled warriors, her heart racing with determination. "We will not allow Threxus's remnants to instill fear in our hearts or our homes," she declared, her voice steady and resolute. "We will find those who are missing and bring them back. This is a fight for our future, for our unity." The warriors responded with a collective roar of agreement, their faces illuminated by the flickering campfire. Jarek felt a surge of hope at Elis's words. They were ready to stand together once more, united by purpose and driven by the desire to protect one another. "Let's divide into teams," Jarek suggested, stepping forward to take command. "Elis, you'll lead one group to scour the nearby forests where we found the child. Rhynak, you and I will take another team to investigate the ruins of the old citadel. We've heard rumors of creatures lurking there." Lorak nodded, crossing his arms. "I'll gather supplies and reinforce our defenses. If we find any remnants, we need to be prepared for an attack." With the plan set, the warriors quickly gathered their gear. Jarek felt a familiar rush of adrenaline, but this time it was paired with a profound sense of purpose. They weren't just defending their homes, they were fighting for the very essence of their newfound alliance. The sun dipped low in the sky as Jarek, Rhynak, and their team made their way toward the citadel. The forest loomed around them, thick and shadowy, as if the trees themselves were holding their breath. "Keep your eyes peeled," Jarek instructed, scanning the area for any signs of movement. "Threxus's forces may be lurking nearby." As they approached the crumbling walls of the citadel, Jarek felt a shiver run down his spine. The ruins were steeped in history, remnants of a time when fear ruled over hope. The stone structures, covered in creeping vines, bore silent witness to the battles fought here. "Let's split up and search for signs of life," Rhynak suggested, gripping his weapon tightly. "We'll cover more ground that way." "Agreed," Jarek replied, his heart pounding in his chest. "Stay alert, and if you see anything unusual, call for backup." The team moved cautiously, splitting into smaller groups to explore the shadows of the citadel. Jarek felt the weight of history pressing down on him, reminding him of the struggles they had faced. He couldn't shake the feeling that they were walking into a trap. As he rounded a corner, Jarek spotted a flicker of movement in the distance. His heart raced as he moved closer, peering into the shadows. Suddenly, a figure emerged, twisted and grotesque, a Zarathian transformed by dark magic. Jarek felt a rush of anger. "There," he shouted, alerting his teammates. "We've got company." The creature lunged at him with a growl, and Jarek barely had time to react. He swung his weapon, narrowly avoiding its claws, and landed a blow against its side. The creature hissed in pain, but it quickly recovered, moving with unnatural speed. "Jarek," Rhynak called, rushing to his side. Together, they fought against the creature, the sound of clashing metal ringing through the air. They managed to corner it, striking together in perfect harmony. With one final blow, Jarek pierced the creature's heart. It collapsed to the ground, its body dissolving into shadow. "Is it over?" Rhynak panted, catching his breath. "For now," Jarek replied, wiping the sweat from his brow. "But we need to stay vigilant. If this one is here, there are likely more nearby." They regrouped, sharing what they had encountered. The air was thick with tension, and Jarek could sense the unease among the warriors. They had faced this darkness before, and it weighed heavily on their hearts. "We need to find the source," Jarek urged, his voice steady. "If Threxus's remnants are here, they must be drawing power from somewhere. We need to eliminate that threat before it can spread." As they continued their search, Jarek's instincts sharpened. He felt a strange pull, as if the shadows were beckoning him deeper into the ruins. He exchanged glances with Rhynak, who seemed to sense the same thing. "Let's go," Jarek said, leading the way toward a crumbling staircase that spiraled down into darkness. The descent was eerie, the air growing cooler as they ventured deeper. The stone walls were damp, and the only sound was the echo of their footsteps. Jarek's heart raced as he felt the shadows close in around them, a reminder of the darkness they had fought so hard to escape. At the bottom of the staircase, they emerged into a vast chamber, dimly lit by flickering torches. The sight before them was both haunting and awe-inspiring. A dark altar stood at the center, surrounded by remnants of past rituals. "What is this place?" Rhynak whispered, eyes wide. "This is where Threxus drew its power," Jarek said, recognizing the significance of the altar. "We must destroy it." As they approached the altar, a cold wind swept through the chamber, and a chilling voice echoed around them. "You dare to defy me?" Jarek felt his blood run cold. Threxus's essence lingered in the air, a remnant of the creature's dark power. "We've defeated you once, and we will do it again," Jarek shouted, drawing on his courage. "Foolish mortals," the voice hissed. "You think you can erase what has been woven into the very fabric of this world? Your unity is a fleeting illusion." Suddenly, shadows began to swirl around them, coalescing into forms twisted Zarathians rising from the depths of darkness. Jarek gripped his weapon tightly, adrenaline surging through him. "Stay together," he yelled to his team. "We can't let them break our lines." As the creatures lunged at them, the warriors fought with fierce determination. Jarek's blade sliced through the darkness, and he could feel the strength of his allies beside him. Rhynak and Elise fought valiantly, their movements a testament to their training and unity. But for every creature they felled, two more seemed to take its place. The shadows closed in, pressing against them with relentless force. Jarek could feel the panic rising, but he forced himself to stay focused. "Focus on the altar," he shouted, making his way through the fray. "We need to destroy it." As they fought their way to the altar, Jarek felt the weight of history bearing down on him. This was the heart of the darkness they had battled, and they had to end it once and for all. "Together," Rhynak shouted, joining Jarek at the altar's edge. They both raised their weapons, ready to strike. With a single, coordinated blow, they smashed their weapons against the dark altar. A shockwave erupted, and the chamber shuddered violently. The shadows screeched, and Jarek felt the dark energy ripple through the air, striking back against the creatures that surrounded them. In the chaos, the altar cracked, fissures spreading across its surface. The darkness began to dissolve, and the shadows that had once loomed over them now shrank away, dissipating into nothingness. The creatures shrieked, their forms flickering and dissolving as the power that had held them captive was severed. "We did it," Elise yelled, breathless and exhilarated. Jarek felt a rush of triumph as the final echoes of the darkness faded. The chamber fell silent, the oppressive weight lifting from the air. They stood together, panting and battered, but alive. "Is it truly over?" Rhynak asked, eyes wide with disbelief. "For now," Jarek replied, still catching his breath. "But we must remain vigilant. There may always be remnants of this darkness." As they made their way back to the surface, Jarek felt a sense of relief mingled with caution. They had faced down the shadows and emerged victorious, but he knew that the threat of darkness could never be fully eradicated. It would always linger in the corners of their world, a reminder of the battles they had fought. When they returned to camp, they were met with a mix of relief and joy. Elise quickly shared their triumph, and the warriors gathered to celebrate. But Jarek knew they needed to address the lingering fears among them. "Today, we face the remnants of our past," he began, standing before the assembled warriors. "But we emerged victorious not just because of our strength, but because of our unity. Together, we have forged bonds that darkness cannot break. We are not just Zorathians and Vorians, we are allies, and we will stand together against whatever comes next." The crowd erupted in cheers, their spirits lifted by Jarek's words. They danced and feasted, the sounds of laughter filling the night air. As Jarek watched, he felt a warmth in his heart. They had faced down the darkness and emerged stronger than ever. But he also knew that their journey was far from over. The world was vast, and while they had overcome this battle, there would always be new challenges ahead. In the weeks that followed, Jarek and his allies worked tirelessly to strengthen their newfound unity. They held training sessions, organized joint hunts, and shared stories that reinforced their shared histories. The bonds forged in battle grew deeper, transforming fear into friendship. The celebration continued into the night, a vibrant tapestry of laughter, song, and camaraderie weaving through the camp. Jarek felt a sense of warmth radiating from the gathered warriors, the scars of battle slowly fading beneath the joy of their newfound unity. Yet, in the depths of his mind, a shadow lingered, a warning whisper that not all was well. As the fire crackled and embers danced into the starlit sky, Jarek found himself sitting with Elise, Rhynak, and Lurak at the edge of the festivities. Their faces were illuminated by the flickering flames, the atmosphere heavy with the aftereffects of battle and victory. "We've come a long way," Elise said, her voice soft but filled with strength. "But we mustn't lose sight of what still lies ahead. There are whispers in the wind, and I fear that the darkness is not entirely gone." Lurak nodded gravely. "The remnants we encountered were only a fraction of what Threxus once commanded. We need to be vigilant." Jarek leaned forward, his brow furrowed in thought. "We've faced them once, and we can do so again. But we must prepare. We can't wait for the darkness to find us. We need to take the fight to them." Rynak's eyes gleamed with determination. "You're right, Jarek. But how do we locate the remnants? They could be lurking anywhere." "I have an idea," Elise interjected, her voice brightening. "We should gather stories from our people. Many have faced strange occurrences since Threxus fell. If we listen to their tales, we might uncover patterns or places to investigate." "Gathering intel is a good plan," Lurak agreed. "We need to connect with the Zorathians and Vorians beyond our immediate camp. They might have insights we haven't considered." Jarek felt a surge of purpose. "Let's set up a council and assembly where warriors from both factions can share their experiences. We can hold it tomorrow evening, under the stars. If there's a gathering storm, we'll find a way to face it together." The next day, Jarek and Elise worked diligently to prepare for the council. They sent out messengers to the surrounding areas, inviting warriors to join them for an evening of sharing stories and insights. As the sun dipped low in the sky, casting a golden glow over the camp, excitement and anticipation filled the air. As twilight approached, warriors gathered around the central fire pit, a flickering beacon in the growing darkness. Jarek stood at the forefront, his heart racing with the weight of leadership. He could see familiar faces, friends who had fought alongside him, and newcomers eager to forge their own bonds. "Welcome, everyone," he called out, his voice carrying over the gathered crowd. "Tonight, we come together not just as Zorathians and Vorians, but as allies bound by a common purpose. We share our stories to learn from one another and prepare for what lies ahead." The crowd murmured in agreement, and Jarek felt a surge of hope. He motioned for Elise to join him, and together they began the evening's proceedings. One by one, warriors stepped forward to share their tales. Some spoke of strange sightings in the woods, figures flitting between the trees, shadows that danced on the edges of their vision. Others recounted eerie whispers in the night, voices calling out in the darkness, echoing fears long thought buried. As the stories unfolded, Jarek began to notice a pattern. The whispers seemed to originate from a specific area, the ruins of Eldor, an ancient site long abandoned after the initial fall of Threxus. "We must investigate the ruins of Eldor," Jarek declared as the last storyteller finished. "If there is a resurgence of darkness, it may be gathering strength there." The crowd erupted in discussion, voices mingling in a chaotic chorus of concern and determination. Lorak raised a hand, calling for quiet. "If we are to venture to Eldor, we must go prepared. We've fought well against the remnants before, but we cannot underestimate them. We should form a coalition, a unified force of both Zarathians and Vorians." Jarek nodded, feeling a surge of pride at Lorak's words. "Agreed. We'll gather supplies and scout the area before we move in. If there are remnants hiding in Eldor, we must be ready to face them head-on." As the council continued, plans were made. The energy in the air was palpable, a mix of fear and resolve. Jarek felt a sense of purpose, knowing they were taking proactive steps to confront the looming threat. The following day, Jarek, Elis, Rhynak, and a team of warriors set out toward the ruins of Eldor. The path was overgrown and twisted, the trees arching overhead like sentinels guarding secrets long forgotten. As they approached the ruins, a sense of unease settled over the group. Jarek could feel the air grow thicker, charged with an energy that prickled at his skin. He glanced at Elis, who wore a similar expression of concern. "Stay close," Jarek instructed, gripping his weapon tightly. "We don't know what might be waiting for us here." The ruins loomed ahead, stone structures crumbling under the weight of time and neglect. Vines crawled over the surfaces, twisting through gaps in the stone like fingers reaching for lost memories. Jarek felt a deep history resonate within these walls, a reminder of both the strength and the darkness that had once thrived here. As they entered the main chamber, a chill swept through the air. The large, vaulted ceiling loomed above them, and the remnants of ancient carvings glinted in the muted light. Shadows flickered at the edges of their vision, and Jarek's instincts flared with a warning. "Form a perimeter," he commanded. "Rhynak, take the left side. Elis, you're with me on the right. Keep your eyes peeled for any signs of movement." The warriors spread out, their senses heightened as they moved through the ruins. Jarek could feel the tension thickening in the air, a sensation that made his skin crawl. Suddenly, a guttural growl echoed through the chamber, sending a jolt of adrenaline through Jarek's veins. "Get ready," he shouted, bracing himself for the oncoming threat. From the shadows, a group of creatures emerged, twisted forms, their eyes glowing with an unnatural light. They were remnants of Threxus's dark magic, transformed into abominations that bore little resemblance to their original selves. "Fight!" Elis shouted, raising her weapon as the creatures lunged at them. The warriors sprang into action, a cacophony of steel meeting flesh erupting in the chamber. Jarek's heart raced as he fought back against the closest creature, the clash of their weapons reverberating in his ears. He felt the adrenaline surge as he dodged a swipe of claws, retaliating with a precise strike to the creature's side. "Stay together," Rhynak called out, slicing through the nearest enemy. "We need to keep our formation." Jarek nodded, instinctively falling into step with his allies. They fought with ferocity, their movements fluid and harmonious, a testament to the bonds they had forged in battle. As the fight raged on, he couldn't help but feel a flicker of hope, a reminder that they were not alone in this fight. As they battled through the chamber, Jarek realized that their strength was more than just physical. It was the unity they had built, the trust and friendship that anchored them in the face of darkness. Suddenly, amidst the chaos, a piercing shriek echoed through the air. Jarek's heart dropped as he turned to see Elis engaged in a fierce struggle with one of the larger creatures. It had her pinned against the wall, its claws poised to strike. "Elis!" Jarek shouted, rushing forward, his weapon raised high. In a split second, he reached her side, plunging his blade into the creature's flank. It howled in pain, releasing Elise as it fell to the ground, its form dissipating into shadow. "Are you okay?" Jarek asked, breathless and concerned. "I'm fine," Elise replied, her eyes fierce. "But we need to keep moving. There are too many of them." Jarek nodded, determination coursing through him. They pushed deeper into the ruins, fighting off waves of the twisted remnants. With every strike, Jarek felt their resolve strengthening, the bond they shared becoming a shield against the darkness. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the last creature fell, its body dissolving into mist. The chamber fell silent, the echoes of battle replaced by heavy breathing and the soft crackle of fading energy. "We did it," Rhynak panted, wiping sweat from his brow. "But we need to find the source of their power. There has to be something here that's keeping them alive." As they explored the remnants of the chamber, Jarek noticed a pulsing light emanating from a darkened corner. It flickered like a heartbeat, a disturbing contrast to the crumbling stone around it. "Over there," he shouted, leading the way toward the source of the light. As they approached, Jarek's heart raced. In the center of the darkness lay an ancient artifact, a crystal glowing with an eerie luminescence, surrounded by symbols that matched those they had seen in the ruins before. "This must be it," Elise said, her voice a mixture of awe and dread. "The source of their power." As Jarek and the others gathered around the glowing crystal, a sense of foreboding settled over them. The air hummed with energy, thick with an ancient power that seemed to pulsate in rhythm with their heartbeats. Jarek felt both drawn to the crystal and repulsed by it, a dichotomy that echoed the battle they had just fought. "We need to destroy it," he said, his voice steady, though his heart raced. "If this is the source of the remnant's power, it's the only way to truly end this threat." Elise nodded, determination shining in her eyes. "But how do we destroy something like this? It looks incredibly powerful." Lurak stepped closer, studying the symbols etched into the stone surrounding the crystal. "These runes seem to suggest a binding spell. It may be tied to the darkness itself. If we can find a way to break that bond, we might be able to shatter the crystal." "Let's start by deciphering the symbols," Rhynak suggested, leaning closer. "There could be a clue in their meanings that tells us how to proceed." As they examined the intricate carvings, Jarek felt a chill run down his spine. The symbols seemed to shimmer with an otherworldly light, almost as if they were alive. He reached out cautiously, tracing a finger over one of the engravings. Instantly, a jolt of energy surged through him, forcing him to step back. "Careful," Elise warned, her eyes wide. "It could be a trap." "It felt like a warning," Jarek replied, shaking off the lingering sensation. "We need to tread carefully. Whatever this is, it's ancient and it knows we're here." Suddenly, the crystal pulsed brighter, sending a shockwave of energy rippling through the chamber. The ground trembled beneath them, and the air filled with a low, haunting hum. "What did we do?" Rhynak shouted, bracing himself against a crumbling pillar as dust rained down. "Nothing yet, but we're running out of time," Jarek shouted back. "We need to find a way to sever the bond before it fully awakens." They quickly gathered around the crystal again, scanning the symbols for anything that might offer insight. Elise pointed to a cluster of runes that seemed to depict a cycle: life, death, and rebirth. "This cycle, it suggests that the crystal feeds on darkness to sustain itself," she said, her voice rising with urgency. "If we can channel our light, our unity, we might disrupt the cycle." Lurak nodded, his face resolute. "It's a risky move. We'd be channeling our energy directly into the crystal, but if we can harness it, it might just work." "Let's do it," Jarek replied, feeling the weight of their situation pressing down on him. "But we must remain connected. We can't let the darkness break our bond." They formed a circle around the crystal, each warrior grasping the hands of the person beside them. Jarek took a deep breath, grounding himself in the moment. He felt the familiar warmth of Elise's hand in his, a reminder of the strength they had built together. "Focus on the light within you," Jarek instructed. "Think of the moments we've shared, the battles we've fought, the unity that binds us. Let it flow through you and into the crystal." As they concentrated, Jarek felt a surge of energy course through the circle. A soft, golden light began to emanate from their joined hands, illuminating the chamber and casting away the shadows that lurked in the corners. The crystal responded, pulsing rhythmically as if it were breathing. The runes glowed brighter, and Jarek felt a connection deepen and understanding of the darkness that had pervaded their world. "Now," Elise shouted, her voice fierce, "push your light into the crystal. We can break the cycle." Jarek concentrated, visualizing the light within him expanding outward. He felt the energy of his allies merging with his own, a powerful wave of unity building as it surged toward the crystal. As the light connected with the artifact, the runes began to writhe, twisting and contorting as if fighting against the energy they were being fed. "Keep going," Rhynak yelled, his voice filled with determination. "We're breaking through." The crystal trembled violently, its light blindingly bright now, flooding the chamber with radiance. Jarek gritted his teeth, feeling the pressure building, the darkness swirling around them like a storm. Suddenly, a deafening roar erupted from the crystal, and a dark shadow poured from its surface thick, oozing, intangible. It coiled around them, attempting to snuff out the light they were projecting. "Hold strong," Jarek shouted, his heart pounding. "Don't let it break our bond." But the darkness was relentless, trying to pull them apart. Jarek felt it tugging at him, sowing seeds of doubt and fear. Images flashed through his mind, reminders of past failures, moments of weakness, and the weight of the burden he carried as a leader. "No," he cried, forcing the darkness from his thoughts. "We are stronger than this. Together, we will prevail." Elise's voice pierced through the chaos, grounding him. "Jarek, remember why we fight. Focus on our unity, our shared purpose." Her words ignited a fire within him, and he channeled that energy back into the light. He could feel Elise and the others rallying behind him, their resolve unyielding as they pushed back against the encroaching darkness. With one final surge, they poured their energy into the crystal, a blinding burst of light erupting from their hands. The darkness howled, twisting violently as the light enveloped it, breaking its hold. "Now, shatter it," Jarek shouted, his voice ringing with determination. In that moment, the crystal cracked, fissures spider webbing across its surface. The runes glowed brighter than ever, and the very air seemed to thrum with power. With a final, ear-splitting roar, the crystal shattered, sending shards flying in all directions. A shockwave of light surged through the chamber, banishing the darkness that had lingered there for so long. Jarek shielded his eyes as the brilliance enveloped him, feeling an overwhelming sense of liberation wash over him. The remnants were no more. They had broken the cycle. As the light faded, Jarek slowly lowered his arms, blinking against the remnants of brightness that danced in his vision. The chamber was transformed, a weight lifted, leaving only echoes of the battle they had fought. "We did it," Elise breathed, a smile breaking across her face. "We truly did it." The warriors began to cheer, their voices rising in celebration. Jarek felt a wave of relief wash over him, and he turned to face his allies, gratitude swelling in his chest. "Thank you," he said, his voice steady but filled with emotion. "We stood together, and we overcame the darkness. I'm proud of each and every one of you." Lurak stepped forward, a grin splitting his face. "Together, we are a force to be reckoned with. We've proven that unity can conquer even the deepest shadows." As they left the ruins, the sun began to rise, casting golden rays across the land. Jarek felt a renewed sense of purpose wash over him, a belief that they could face whatever came next. In the days that followed, word of their victory spread throughout the region, igniting hope in the hearts of both Zarathians and Vorians. Jarek and his allies worked tirelessly to rebuild what had been lost, forging deeper connections between their people. The council they had established grew in size and strength, as warriors from all corners gathered to share their stories and experiences. The bond between Zarathians and Vorians deepened, transforming from a fragile alliance into a formidable union. But even as they celebrated their victory, Jarek could sense a lingering tension in the air. Whispers of other dark forces began to circulate, rumors of shadows gathering in the far reaches of their land. It seemed that while they had faced one threat, others were already looming on the horizon. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Jarek found himself standing at the edge of the camp, gazing into the distance. Elise approached, her expression thoughtful. "Something weighs on your mind," she observed, crossing her arms. "What troubles you?" Jarek sighed, running a hand through his hair. "We've fought so hard, Elise, and while we've defeated the remnants of Threxus, I can't shake the feeling that there's more to come. We've merely scratched the surface of this darkness." Elise nodded, her gaze steady. "You're right. We've dealt with one enemy, but we must remain vigilant. The world is vast, and shadows often lurk where we least expect them." "I want to be prepared," Jarek confessed. "If there are more threats out there, we need to face them as a united front. We can't afford to be caught off guard again." "We will prepare," Elise assured him. "Together, we will continue to build our strength. We'll train, we'll gather knowledge, and we'll face whatever comes next. And we will do it side by side." Jarek felt a sense of comfort at her words. They had weathered the storm before, and with Elise by his side, he felt ready to confront whatever challenges awaited them. As the weeks passed, the camp thrived under the renewed spirit of cooperation between the Zarathians and Vorians. Training sessions were held daily, honing their combat skills, while shared meals and storytelling sessions fostered camaraderie and understanding. Jarek watched as warriors from both factions exchanged techniques and strategies, their laughter ringing through the air like a promise of resilience. However, beneath the surface of this flourishing alliance lay an undercurrent of unease. Jarek sensed it in the glances exchanged during meetings and in the hushed conversations that quieted when he approached. The whispers of other dark forces looming on the horizon remained a constant reminder of the fragility of their peace. One evening, after a particularly intense training session, Jarek gathered Elise, Rhynak, and Lurak around a flickering campfire. The flames danced wildly, casting shadows that flickered against their faces. "I've been thinking," Jarek began, drawing their attention. "While we prepare for what might come, we should also learn more about the darkness we've faced. There could be valuable knowledge hidden in our past's ancient texts, legends, or even old battles that could inform our strategy." Elise nodded thoughtfully. "You're right. Understanding the origins of these threats could give us an advantage. If we can uncover the history of Threxus and his minions, we might find a way to anticipate their moves." Rhynak leaned forward, his eyes sparkling with interest. "I've heard of a sage who lives in the Whispering Woods, an elder who knows the tales of old. If anyone could help us understand the darkness, it would be him." Lurak crossed his arms, a skeptical look on his face. "The Whispering Woods are treacherous. Many have entered and never returned. Are we sure this sage even exists?" "We won't know unless we try," Jarek countered. "We need answers, and if the sage can help us, it's worth the risk. Besides, we can't let fear dictate our actions. Together, we can handle anything that comes our way." After a moment of silence, Lurak sighed, a reluctant grin creeping onto his face. "All right, I'm in. But we should go prepared. If the woods are as dangerous as they say, we need to be on guard." The next morning, the group set out for the Whispering Woods, a dense forest known for its twisting paths and the ethereal sounds that echoed through the trees. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and the rustle of leaves, creating an atmosphere that was both enchanting and foreboding. As they walked, Jarek felt the weight of his responsibility bearing down on him. He glanced at Elise, whose stride was confident, her expression focused. He admired her strength and wondered how many times she had faced her own fears. "Are you ready for this?" he asked, falling into step beside her. She smiled, though it was tinged with seriousness. "I've faced the darkness before, Jarek. This is just another challenge, but it's our knowledge of it that will ultimately give us the power to conquer it." Their conversation was interrupted as they approached the edge of the woods. The trees grew denser, their branches intertwining like gnarled fingers reaching out to ensnare the unwary. Stay close together, Rhynak urged, glancing warily at the shadows between the trees. This place has a reputation for leading travelers astray. As they delved deeper into the woods, the ambient sound shifted. The whispers of the leaves transformed into a haunting melody that seemed to echo from all directions. Jarek felt a shiver run down his spine, a sense of being watched that he couldn't shake. "Keep your eyes open," Lurak warned. "We don't know what might be lurking here." The path twisted and turned, obscuring their way forward. With each step, Jarek felt the pull of something ancient and powerful, as if the woods themselves were alive, breathing in rhythm with the energy of the land. After what felt like hours, they stumbled upon a clearing. At its center stood a weathered stone pedestal, covered in moss and surrounded by vibrant flowers that seemed to glow in the muted light. "Look," Elise pointed, her voice low. "There's something there." On the pedestal lay an old tome, its pages worn and yellowed with age. Jarek approached cautiously, feeling the weight of history in the air. As he reached for the book, a soft voice drifted through the clearing, sending chills down his spine. "Beware, seekers of knowledge. The past holds many truths, but it also bears great burdens." The group froze, eyes darting around the clearing. "Who's there?" Jarek called out, his heart racing. An ethereal figure emerged from the shadows, a tall, slender woman with flowing silver hair that shimmered like moonlight. Her eyes were wise and knowing, filled with centuries of knowledge. "I am Lyra, the guardian of these woods," she said, her voice melodic yet tinged with sadness. "You seek the sage, but what you truly seek is understanding. Knowledge can illuminate your path, but it can also lead to despair." Jarek took a step forward, emboldened by her presence. "We wish to learn about the darkness that plagues our lands. We've faced remnants of Threxus, but we fear there may be more lurking in the shadows." Lyra regarded them with a penetrating gaze. "The darkness is a reflection of the heart, a manifestation of fears and desires unfulfilled. It thrives on chaos and division. If you seek to understand it, you must first confront your own shadows." "Confront our own shadows?" Rhynak echoed, skepticism etched on his face. "What does that even mean?" "Each of you carries burdens, memories that haunt you, fears that bind you," Lyra explained. "The path ahead requires more than mere knowledge. It requires self-reflection and growth. Only by facing your own darkness can you hope to overcome the darkness that threatens your world." Jarek felt a weight settle in his chest. He knew all too well the burdens he carried, the losses, the failures, the guilt that clung to him like a shroud. He turned to Elise, who met his gaze with understanding. "What must we do?" Jarek asked, his voice steady despite the turmoil within. Lyra gestured toward the tome. "This book contains the stories of those who have faced their own shadows. Read it, and you will find the wisdom you seek. But be warned, the truths revealed may be difficult to bear." With a deep breath, Jarek approached the pedestal and opened the tome. The pages crackled with energy, revealing tales of ancient battles and personal struggles. The words leaped to life, drawing him in as if they were whispering secrets meant only for him. The first story unfolded before his eyes, an account of a warrior who had faced betrayal from within their ranks. The pain of losing trust gnawed at Jarek as he read about the warrior's journey through doubt and despair. He could feel the anguish reflected in his own struggles, moments when he had doubted himself and the loyalty of those around him. He glanced at Elise, who stood beside him, her expression pensive. "Do you see?" she whispered. "This is not just history, it's a reflection of our own fears." As Jarek continued to read, the stories grew more personal, revealing vulnerabilities that resonated deeply within him. A tale of a leader burdened by the weight of expectations echoed his own feelings of inadequacy. He felt the pain of loss as warriors mourn their fallen comrades, their grief palpable in the ink. The further he read, the more he understood. Each story was a reminder of the shadows they all carried, the fears that threatened to consume them. He felt the weight of those burdens, but he also felt the glimmer of hope, stories of resilience and triumph over adversity. "Jarek," Elise said softly, drawing his attention. "We can't let this darkness define us. We must face it together. He looked into her eyes, seeing the strength that had drawn him to her time and again. You're right. We can't let our past dictate our futures. With renewed determination, Jarek turned the pages, seeking the key to confronting the darkness. He found stories of redemption, of warriors who had faced their inner demons and emerged stronger for it. The realization washed over him a truth that bound them all together. Lyra, he called, his voice steady. We wish to confront our shadows, to learn from them. We want to understand how to face the darkness that looms before us. The guardian of the woods nodded, her expression approving. Then prepare yourselves, for the path ahead is fraught with challenges. You will each face a trial and encounter with your own shadows. Only by embracing your truth can you hope to emerge victorious. As the weight of her words settled over them, Jarek felt a mixture of fear and anticipation. He knew the journey ahead would be difficult, but it was a necessary step toward understanding and strength. Let's do this together, he said, glancing at Elise, Rhynak, and Lurak. We can't face the darkness alone. We must support one another. The group nodded, their expressions resolute. They understood that the challenges ahead would not just test their strength, but also their bonds. Very well, Lyra said, stepping back into the shadows. When you are ready, call upon me, and I will guide you to your trials. Embrace the journey, and you will. The air felt charged with anticipation as Jarek, Elise, Rhynak, and Lurak prepared themselves for the trials ahead. The whispered warnings of Lyra echoed in their minds, urging them to confront their shadows and embrace the journey that awaited them. Though fear lingered in the corners of Jarek's mind, a stronger force urged him forward, the desire to understand, to grow, and to emerge more powerful together. As they gathered in the clearing beneath the watchful gaze of the trees, Jarek took a deep breath, grounding himself. The tome lay open on the pedestal, its pages fluttering as if stirred by an unseen wind, beckoning them to uncover its secrets. Are you all ready for this? Jarek asked, scanning the faces of his friends. Each of them wore an expression of determination, tempered with a flicker of anxiety. Ready as I'll ever be, Rhynak replied, his bravado belying the apprehension in his eyes. I trust in our bond, Elise said softly, her gaze steady. No matter what we face, we'll do it together. Let's just hope these trials are as straightforward as they sound, Lurak added with a hint of sarcasm, though a grin tugged at the corners of his mouth. With a shared nod, they formed a circle around the pedestal. Jarek took a step forward, closing his eyes. Lyra, we call upon you. We are ready to confront our shadows and learn from them. Silence enveloped the clearing, and for a moment, Jarek felt the weight of the world pressing down on him. Then, a soft rustling filled the air, and Lyra's ethereal figure emerged once more, a gentle smile gracing her lips. You have chosen wisely, seekers, she said, her voice like the rustle of leaves. Each of you will face a trial that reflects your inner struggles. Be prepared to confront not only your fears, but also the truths that lie beneath them. Only then can you hope to emerge stronger. The atmosphere shifted, thickening with anticipation. Jarek felt a pull toward the tome, and as he glanced down, he saw words shimmering on the page. They formed a sentence, glowing with a warm light. Embrace your truth to shatter the darkness. Who will go first? Jarek asked, his voice steady but tinged with uncertainty. I'll go, Rhynak declared, stepping forward. Let's get this over with. Be careful, Elise warned, concern flickering in her eyes. Rhynak nodded, a hint of nervousness creeping into his bravado. As he approached the pedestal, the air around him shimmered, distorting like heat rising from the ground. In an instant, he was enveloped in a wave of light, vanishing from their sight. What do you think he'll face? Lurak asked, his voice low as they watched the space where Rhynak had stood. His past, perhaps, Elise replied, her gaze fixed on the shimmering air. He's always put up a brave front, but I know he carries doubts beneath it all. The clearing fell silent as they awaited Rynak's return. Moments felt like hours, and the tension between them grew palpable. Jarek's heart raced, both in anticipation and concern for his friend. He glanced at Elise, whose expression was equally tense, her hands clasped tightly. Finally, a flicker of light erupted from the pedestal, and Rhynak reappeared, breathless and wide-eyed. He staggered back a step, clearly shaken. "What happened?" Jarek asked, stepping forward. I faced my insecurities," Rhynak stammered, his voice unsteady. "I was taken back to a fight I had lost. It was all my fault. I let my team down." I could hear their voices, accusing me. Jarek's heart ached for his friend. "But you're not that person anymore. You've grown. We all have." Rhynak nodded, visibly struggling to regain his composure. "I know. But it's hard to shake the feeling that I'm not enough, that I'll let everyone down again." "None of us are perfect," Elise reassured him, stepping closer. "What matters is how we rise after we fall." Rhynak took a deep breath, grounding himself. "Thanks. I'll work on it." With renewed determination, Jarek turned to the pedestal. "Who's next?" "I will go," Lorak said, stepping forward before Jarek could protest. "I've faced my fair share of shadows." As Lorak approached the pedestal, the air shimmered once more, and he vanished in a flash of light. The group stood in anxious silence, waiting for him to return. When Lorak finally reappeared, he looked pale and shaken, a far cry from his usual bravado. "What did you see?" Jarek asked, concern lacing his voice. "It was my family," Lorak said, his voice thick with emotion. "They were angry with me for leaving, for pursuing this life as a warrior. They didn't understand why I chose this path, and I felt their disappointment weigh on me like a stone." Jarek felt a pang of sympathy for his friend. "You've chosen to fight for something greater. You're making a difference." "I know," Lorak replied, rubbing the back of his neck. "But it still hurts. I wish they could see that." Elise stepped forward, placing a hand on Lorak's shoulder. "Your path is your own. You've made your choices for a reason, and it's okay to feel conflicted. Embrace your journey, and know that you're not alone." Lorak nodded, the tension in his shoulders easing slightly. "Thanks, Elise. I needed that." With a sense of solidarity, Jarek turned back to the pedestal. "Elise, it's your turn." Elise took a deep breath, her gaze steady. "I'm ready," she said softly, stepping forward. As she approached the pedestal, the light enveloped her, and she vanished. The remaining three stood in anxious anticipation, their hearts heavy with concern for their friend. When Elise returned, her expression was a mixture of relief and sorrow. Jarek rushed to her side. "What did you face?" "I confronted my fears about leadership," Elise replied, her voice shaking slightly. "I was shown moments when I felt inadequate, when I doubted my decisions and a weight of responsibility pressed down on me. I saw the consequences of those doubts, the potential for failure." "You're an incredible leader," Rhynak said, his voice firm. "You've always known how to bring us together." "But what if I make the wrong choice?" Elise countered, her eyes glistening. "What if I fail when it matters most?" Jarek reached for her hand, squeezing it gently. "We all face doubts, but you've led us through so much already. You have the strength to carry on. We'll face whatever comes together." Elise took a deep breath, the weight on her shoulders seeming to lift slightly. "Thank you, Jarek. I'll remember that." With the 3 trials complete, all eyes turned to Jarek. The weight of their expectations settled on him, but he steeled himself. "It's my turn now," he said, trying to mask the uncertainty in his voice. "Be careful," Rhynak warned, though his eyes were filled with encouragement. Jarek approached the pedestal, feeling the warmth of the light envelop him. He closed his eyes, ready to confront whatever darkness awaited him. The world around him shifted, and he found himself standing in a vast, empty expanse, an endless void stretching into nothingness. A chilling silence surrounded him, and he felt the weight of isolation pressing down on him. "Jarek," a familiar voice echoed through the void. "You have carried the weight of leadership, but at what cost?" Turning, Jarek saw a figure emerging from the shadows, a manifestation of his own insecurities. It looked like him, but the features were twisted and dark, a reflection of his fears. "What do you want?" Jarek demanded, though his voice wavered slightly. "I want you to face the truth," the shadow replied, its voice dripping with disdain. "You've let your fear of failure control you. You think you're protecting your friends, but all you're doing is suffocating them with your doubt." "No," Jarek shouted, anger surging within him. "I'm doing my best." "Your best is not enough," the shadow taunted. "You've lost people before. You've failed before. How can you possibly think you can lead them now?" Images flooded Jarek's mind, memories of battles lost, friends who had fallen, moments when he had felt powerless. The weight of each failure pressed down on him like a crushing wave. "I'm not that person anymore," he shouted, desperation creeping into his voice. "I've learned from my mistakes." "Have you?" the shadow sneered. "You still carry the weight of those failures. You still let them define you." Jarek felt a surge of frustration. "I won't let you control me. I will not let my past dictate my future." In that moment, a flicker of light ignited within him, an ember of determination sparked by the love and support of his friends. He remembered the bonds they had forged, the strength they had built together, and the victories they had achieved despite their fears. "You're wrong, Jarek." Jarek stood firm in the void, his heart racing, fueled by a newfound resolve. The shadow loomed larger, feeding off his doubts, but he felt the warmth of his friends behind him, the strength of their shared journey igniting a fire within. "I am not alone," he declared, his voice steady and defiant. "I have faced darkness before, and I have come out stronger. I have learned that failure does not define me. It is how I rise after that matters." The shadow recoiled, the contempt in its form wavering as Jarek stepped forward, determination blazing in his eyes. "I have seen the depths of despair, and I know the cost of fear. I will not let you control me or my friends any longer." As Jarek spoke, the void around him began to shift. The darkness seemed to retreat, replaced by flickers of light that danced around him like fireflies, illuminating the empty space. Each flicker represented a memory, moments of courage, laughter, and love shared with his friends. They were reminders of the journey they had taken together and the strength that lay in their unity. "I choose to embrace my truth," Jarek shouted, feeling the light swell around him. "I choose to embrace hope." With a final surge of energy, he reached out toward the shadow. "You do not own me. I am Jarek, leader of my friends, a warrior who has learned from the past and will fight for our future." The shadow let out a howl of anguish, its form dissolving into wisps of darkness that faded into the light. Jarek felt the weight lift from his shoulders, and the void transformed into a brilliant landscape filled with vibrant colors and the sounds of laughter. He blinked, and suddenly he was back in the clearing, his friends standing around him, their faces reflecting relief and pride. Elise stepped forward, her eyes shining. "You did it, Jarek," she exclaimed, a radiant smile breaking across her face. "You faced your shadow and emerged stronger." "I couldn't have done it without all of you," Jarek said, feeling a swell of gratitude. "We are stronger together. Our bonds are what truly empower us." Rhynak clapped Jarek on the shoulder, a grin lighting up his face. "Looks like we're all a little more whole now. What's next?" Lurak, his expression serious yet proud, added, "We've confronted our fears, but the battle isn't over. Threxus is still out there, and we need to prepare for whatever comes next." Jarek nodded, his resolve hardening once more. "You're right. We've learned from our pasts, but we need to harness that knowledge to face the future, together." As they gathered around the pedestal, Lyra appeared once more, her presence a comforting light in the midst of their uncertainty. "You have faced your trials and emerged united," she said, her voice like a soothing breeze. "Your journey is not yet complete, but you have taken a crucial step toward understanding the darkness." "What must we do now?" Jarek asked, eager for guidance. "The knowledge you seek lies within," Lyra replied. "You must combine your strengths and face Threxus as one. You will find the answers to your questions in the heart of the Shadow Realm, where the darkness dwells." Only by confronting Threxus directly can you hope to shatter the hold he has over your world. Elise stepped forward, determination burning in her eyes. Then we will go to the Shadow Realm. Together, we will confront him and put an end to this once and for all. Agreed, Rhynak said, clenching his fists. We've come too far to turn back now. Jerk felt the familiar thrill of camaraderie surge through him. We will face whatever challenges lie ahead, and we will do it as a united front. Lyra smiled, her gaze full of wisdom and encouragement. Your bond will be your greatest weapon. Trust in one another, and you will find the strength to overcome. With renewed purpose, the group set out from the Whispering Woods, their hearts steeled for the journey ahead. The path to the Shadow Realm lay shrouded in uncertainty, but they felt a sense of empowerment with every step they took. Days passed as they journeyed deeper into the unknown, facing treacherous terrain and the remnants of dark magic left in the wake of Threxus's corruption. Yet, each obstacle brought them closer together, their skills sharpening, their bond strengthening. Jerk felt the weight of leadership settle more comfortably on his shoulders, buoyed by the unwavering support of his friends. Finally, they reached the entrance to the Shadow Realm, a dark portal pulsing with ominous energy. It was a swirling vortex of shadows and flickering light, a doorway that seemed to beckon them forward, yet warn them to turn back. This is it, Jerk said, his heart racing. Are we ready? Elise stepped forward, her hand resting on Jerk's arm. We've faced our fears, and we've learned from our pasts. We're ready to confront Threxus. Together, Rhynak added, his voice steady. No matter what happens, we fight as one. Lorak's eyes shone with determination. Let's finish this. With a deep breath, Jerk nodded. They joined hands, forming a circle of strength and unity, and stepped through the portal together. The moment they crossed the threshold, the world around them transformed. The air crackled with energy, and the landscape shifted into a realm of swirling shadows and jagged cliffs, illuminated only by a pale, sickly light. The ground beneath them felt unstable, a reminder of the darkness that lingered in every corner. Jerk felt a shiver run down his spine. Stay alert, he whispered. Threxus could be anywhere. As they advanced cautiously, the shadows shifted around them, whispering in voices that echoed with torment. Jerk tightened his grip on Elise's hand, the warmth of her presence a grounding force amidst the cold darkness. Do you hear that? Lorak asked, his voice low. Yeah, Rhynak replied, his expression grim. It's like they're trying to get into our heads. Jerk steeled himself against the unsettling whispers, focusing on their goal. We have to stay focused. Our strength lies in each other. We can't let the darkness divide us. Just then, a figure emerged from the shadows, tall and imposing, cloaked in darkness, with eyes that glowed like embers. Jerk recognized him instantly. Threxus, the source of the darkness that had haunted their lives. Welcome, warriors, Threxus said, his voice smooth and chilling. I've been expecting you. We've come to end this, Jerk declared, stepping forward. You will not control us any longer. Threxus laughed, a sound that echoed with malice. You think you can defeat me? You are nothing but fragments of a fading dream. You will all succumb to despair. With a wave of his hand, shadows surged toward them, twisting and writhing like living creatures. Jerk felt the weight of fear creeping into his heart, but he pushed it aside, focusing on the warmth of his friends beside him. Stand firm, Elise shouted, raising her sword. We fight together. The group sprang into action, each of them channeling their unique strengths. Elise and Rhynak fought side by side, their movements fluid as they countered the encroaching shadows. Lorak focused on using his agility to outmaneuver the dark tendrils, while Jerk drew upon his leadership, rallying their spirits. As they fought, Jerk could feel the bond they shared illuminating the darkness around them. Each time a shadow closed in, they pushed back together, their energy combining into a powerful force that repelled the darkness. Remember your trials, Jerk shouted, drawing on the strength of their pasts. We have faced our fears and emerged stronger. We will not be defined by our shadows. With every word, the light within them grew brighter, illuminating the darkness that surrounded Threxus. The villain snarled, anger flaring in his eyes. "You think you can defeat me? I am the embodiment of darkness." "No," Jerk shouted back, conviction surging through him. "You are the fear we choose to conquer. You are not invincible." The shadows recoiled, their movements faltering. Seizing the moment, Jerk charged forward, determination blazing in his heart. With every ounce of strength, he swung his sword, the blade cutting through the dark tendrils, creating a path toward Threxus. "Now," he yelled, gesturing to his friends. Elis, Rhynak, and Lurak surged forward, their attacks synchronized as they pressed the advantage. Together, they formed a shield of light that enveloped Threxus, pushing against the darkness that he wielded. "Together," Jerk urged, feeling their energy intertwine. "Let the light of our bond shine brighter than the darkness." In that moment, their connection erupted into a brilliant explosion of light, engulfing Threxus and illuminating the Shadow Realm. The darkness shrieked, a sound filled with rage and fear, as it began to dissolve under the weight of their combined strength. "No," Threxus howled, his form flickering. "You cannot do this." "We can and we will," Jerk declared, channeling every ounce of their shared hope. "Your reign of darkness ends here.